The man hasn't eaten nor drunk, and has been playing the same game for 9 years, but when he finally clears the level, he is transported into the game world, and facing this sudden turn of events. What is really going on? Just before this, I, lying in the hospital bed, happened to discover a single-player RPG game, which even had the rare 2D graphics. At the time, it was because the game was free, so I decided to install it with the mindset of just trying it out. But soon after, you will be deeply captivated by it. The most unique aspect of this game is that if you make a single misjudgment, leading to the character's death, the carefully developed character will disappear. You will have to start over. And with my strong will, I continued playing this game through school, graduation, and work. Even when I was fired, I was still playing. In the end, in the boss's office, I clicked the confirm button with an excited heart. Excitement and anticipation filled my mind, but the next second, the screen emitted a bright light. Everything before me instantly turned into a blur. A ringing sound filled my ears. An unidentified heat spread across my skin. I lost consciousness in an instant. When I opened my eyes again, it's not the floodlights that illuminate the darkness, but the flickering torches, and all around are muscular, wild men, and an uncle raising his hands, shouting loudly, "Young warriors, now, let's begin. Come up one by one and choose a suitable WQ." Although it's a language I've never heard before, I somehow understood it all. After calming down and looking around, I concluded that I had been transported into a game world. Right now, the first thing I need to do is confirm the situation. With that thought in mind, I lowered my head, my body jolting in fear. Large, powerful hands, full of strong muscles, and they were acting according to my will. I had become a barbarian. This is a scene from the Dungeon and Stone game. So it wasn't just me who was transported into the game. This kid's in the same boat. At that moment, the barbarian appeared before us. Who's talking? Seeing this unusual expression, it seemed like more than just a noise. I immediately said it wasn't me. Then Uncle Quan and the barbarian's gaze shifted to the person beside them. Seeing his terrified and flustered expression, they didn't say a word. He immediately solved it with a single axe strike. I was shocked and tried to remain calm, but all I could think about was one question: why kill? Then I heard the uncle's explanation. Kaduya's son, the soul of Mount Volcano Hill, is filled with evil spirits. Little soldiers, erase everything the evil spirit just said from your memories. The moment you hear the team leader's words, naturally, information will be pieced together in your minds. Intel 1, real-world players have also been brought into the game. Intel 2, these players are considered evil spirits here. Intel 3, we're dead if this fact is discovered. Despite the bloodshed, the CR ritual continues. But now, I have a bigger problem. I don't even know my own name. If my name is called and no one responds, it would be very suspicious. So, in a very short time, I made a decision. With fewer and fewer people left, I had to gamble on a name no one would answer. Bjorn, Youngdel's son, came out. The moment of expectation finally arrived. 2 seconds passed after the name was called, but no one left. While realizing this fact, I took a step forward. I walked towards the chieftain, my shoulders squared and my bearing upright. In the end, my choice was the right one. The chieftain's gaze held no suspicion. I suppressed my strange excitement. I adjusted my breathing. I now know my name. Bjorn Yandel. Now, the second problem arises. Choosing WQ. I've my thoughts. The barbarians in the game have no magical abilities at all, but possess great physical strength. So, when I play the game, I always choose to engage in close-range combat with WQ. Although it looks cool, the problem is, it's too easy to die. After making a few wrong decisions, I customized my own development method. I immediately and decisively chose Shield and WQ, because in my nearly 10 years of gaming experience, it was the Shield that helped me reach the highest level. And once I chose WQ, the CR ceremony is now officially over. Once the barbarians pass the CR ceremony and become true warriors, they must all participate in the tribe's labyrinth test. And the labyrinth we're looking for is inside the city we've followed the minister to. With a shout from the minister, these young barbarians charged towards the city, shouting. Although I'm reluctant, I can only loudly follow behind. After running for a while, thankfully, the barbarian captain at the front suddenly stopped. He turned around and shouted boldly, "I think I'm lost." Then, amidst the complaints of these young barbarians, Nea, the chieftain's daughter, stepped forward. Under many expectant gazes, Nea happily took the lead, but she was no different from the previous guides. We were equally led astray. At that moment, I realized that these barbarians were purely muscle-bound and simple-minded, because no matter who was leading, those behind would simply follow, never considering whether the route was correct. And I, newly arrived in this new world, didn't want to be too ostentatious. So I approached Einar and told her that we should just follow the explorers ahead. She agreed with this idea and excitedly led us to the entrance of the maze. When I saw the magnificent entrance to the maze, I hesitated. Was entering the labyrinth the right choice? Because in the real world, I've always been plagued by illness. Will I be able to defeat monsters with my fists in this state? But this Dungeons and Dragons game has a tax system. From the moment you become a true warrior, every warrior must pay taxes regularly. If I can't offer anything but death, there are two ways to make money. The first is to enter the dungeon and fight monsters. The second is to work at a tavern. The problem is that these taverns don't hire barbarians. And just then, NEA appeared behind me. He actually asked me how to become as smart as me. You're the smartest barbarian I've ever met. Following my perfunctory answer, he promised to repay me if he could survive the maze. When I asked if he wasn't afraid of death, she answered firmly, "Of course I'm afraid of death, but as a warrior, it's even more terrifying not to fight." After seeing her unwavering will, I no longer hesitated. I boldly stepped into the maze. Ting said, "Man, this man was actually teleported into. I have played in the world of games for 9 years. I became a barbarian, but just as I entered here, the system warned me of imminent death. Just now, full of confidence, I thought my strong body, combined with my knowledge of the game, would be enough to survive in the maze. But after entering the maze, I realized how naive I was. Where I was, it was pitch black. No light at all. If it were according to the game settings, there would be crystals on the walls acting as light sources. Of course, there are also dark areas on the first floor, just a small section leading to the second floor, and I might be in these dark areas. I tried calling out my companions' names, but none answered. Currently, I'm alone. Then, I supported myself with my shield in one hand, and the wall with the other, slowly moving forward. A searing pain shot through my ankle. I'd stepped on a trap. I wanted to cry out in pain, but I endured the pain with all my might, because only one type of monster uses traps on this floor: goblins. And that guy's definitely nearby. I instinctively raised my shield to cover myself, because a cunning goblin might be hiding in the dark, quietly waiting for me to lose my nerve. Regardless, I'll do what I have to do first. After lowering my posture, I used both hands to open the trap and pulled my foot out. If I had been wearing leather shoes, it wouldn't hurt this much. At this moment, my right foot was gradually losing feeling. This trap is even venomous. I need to kill it before I lose all sensation. I started shouting greetings to the whole goblin family, but no matter how harshly I cursed, I still couldn't hear any sound. Now I felt like an idiot. But as I quickened my pace to leave, I actually heard footsteps behind me. This cunning fellow was indeed watching me secretly. I tried to quicken my pace, and the footsteps behind me quickened too. When I suddenly turned to face my enemy, all I saw was pitch black. I can see nothing. My right leg is still bleeding profusely. I know these goblins' nature well. The more their prey struggles, the more excited they become. It's waiting for me to bleed to death. Then I'll come back to collect the bodies. Thinking this, I changed my plans. I stopped. Then I staggered and fell to the ground. My forehead, which hit a rock, ached as if it would split open, but I couldn't make a sound. From now on, it's a battle of patience. If that guy thinks I've already fallen, and tries to approach me, then that will be my victory. If I truly fall before that, then that will be my defeat. The guy's footsteps slowly approached, so slow it made me yawn, just as I expected. Even though the prey had fallen, the cunning fellow was still suspicious. Then, he actually threw stones at me, to confirm whether I'm really dead. After I stopped responding, this guy joyfully walked toward me. From the sound of his steps, I could feel how happy he was. I suppressed my excitement, calmly judging the distance by the sound. When the sound neared my ear, I suddenly stood up and threw a punch at the guy, but I missed. The agile guy actually dodged my punch. As I regretted misjudging the distance, a surge of power suddenly surged through my body, a strange sensation. The next second, I pinned down that hateful goblin. The feeling this body gave me was far superior to my disease-ridden body in the real world. So satisfying. After my countless punches, the goblin below stopped moving. Then, the goblin's body gradually disappeared. A small stone appeared on the ground. This becomes currency in the game. 9 great horse stone. In my memory, this was worth about a loaf of bread. But regardless, I let out a wry smile. I went to so much trouble, and all I got was this horse stone. Then again, this is a game world. This maze contains even stronger monsters, and killing them will yield treasure. But, in the city outside, there are also the alien races I know. Now I'm dragging my completely worn out feet. I was crawling on the ground. First, I wasn't using my injured foot, so I didn't feel any pain. My speed was actually faster than before. Most importantly, I wouldn't step on any more traps. In return, my elbows and knees are a little sore, but it's completely bearable. There's nothing I wouldn't do to survive. But at this moment, the system prompted that I was suffering from excessive and continuous bleeding. I was facing death. In my despair, I saw the crystal glittering at the far end of the passage. Most importantly, I saw hope. I desperately crawled. I closed my eyes and opened them again. This time I clearly saw about 5 or 6 people. A group appeared directly ahead. They also discovered me, barely alive. After seeing that I was a newbie, one of the leaders, I asked the priestess in the team if she was willing to heal me. I was shocked when I heard there was a priestess in their team. Having a priestess meant that this team must be full of elites, but this priestess didn't want to heal me. That's when I noticed the man with a sword at his waist. He took a potion from his bag and threw it to me. Then I received his treatment. My health began to recover, but the feeling of recovering with this potion was extremely painful. I slowly got up. I was about to thank him when, but the blonde man asked a question, asking why I, a newbie, could get here faster than them. He wanted to know if I had a secret route and would sell it to them. Hearing that, I understood. That's why they saved me. But this is better. After all, help without reason is more dangerous. When I truthfully informed them that the entrance to the maze is right here, the man also recalled a book he had once read that mentioned dark areas, but this kind of thing only happens once every 100 years. Hearing this, I felt incredibly unlucky. Something that only happens once a century. I, a complete newbie, encountered it right away. I stared at the place where they left. I quickly ran over and picked up my shield from the ground. I rearranged my equipment. I began my leveling journey. Thanks to the experience from the last kill, and with the help of the crystal here, I recovered my sight. These goblins aren't any kind of danger at all. Even their traps were clearly visible. Meanwhile, the adventuring party that had left earlier successfully reached the entrance to the second level. As the blonde man triggered the mechanism, the entrance gradually brightened, but a marksman in the team discovered something unusual. A blood-soaked trap. A single, unidentified sandal lay there forlornly. Bloodstains, starting from the trap, stretched along the curving passage. They guessed that this was my sandal. And only now did they realize. A seriously wounded man, able to crawl for over 10 kilometers in the dark. Something none of the others in his team could do. To get a good night's sleep in this world, you have to find someone to team up with. But, if I end up with a creepy old man as a companion, the consequences would be unthinkable. Just before this, while I was continuously fighting in the maze, I encountered several major issues. First, the food problem. Because the food bag given by the tribal chief had a hole in it, 5 days worth of the 7 days supply of food is missing. Right now, I can only save and conserve what I have. Secondly, the system is prompting me that I need to replenish my water supply, although water is a more important resource than food. But the tribal chief didn't provide water. Therefore, I concluded that within the maze, self-sufficiency should be no problem. Indeed, I didn't take too long to find a water source. I followed the sound of dripping water, and discovered a small pond. There's already an explorer drinking water. This is the first adventurer I've seen. Besides the blonde team, he saw me from a distance, and immediately turned around and left. He probably didn't want to be associated with me, all covered in blood. After getting a good rest, I took some time off, to check the delivery. I counted them. It's equivalent to 44 loaves of bread. If I recall the time I almost died, I have to say this is a fortunate thing. But there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. In return, I felt an overwhelming drowsiness. As a living being, I should maintain my sleep. But, how am I supposed to sleep in a labyrinth full of monsters? There are two ways. Entrust my life to heaven and take a short nap. Or, find companions who can protect each other. Now, everyone is probably just as exhausted. It's more reliable to form a temporary partnership with someone suitable. After making my decision, I started looking for a partner in the maze. But I was rejected by everyone. They don't like barbarians. They think barbarians are unreliable. In the midst of their anger, a human man who looked to be about 40 years old, smiled and walked towards me, asking if I was looking for companions. At this point, someone approached me to team up. It took me by surprise. But, because I was too exhausted, I agreed right away. The experienced-looking man first introduced himself. Then, while shaking my hand, he said, although having 3 friends at night is the best, but forcing myself to find them feels like a waste of energy. This feels like wanting to be alone with someone. Added with a tone like an old pro. It always makes me feel bullied. I quickly shook off his hand. Tell him not to play any tricks. After a brief exchange of opinions, we decided to spend our first night together. He suggested we use rock paper scissors to decide who sleeps first. Without any surprises, I lost the first game. The older man took out his watch. He kindly showed me how to use it. This might be how people here perceive barbarians. Then the man took out a blanket and covered himself. He used his backpack as a pillow and lay down. Before long, he fell into a deep sleep. After waiting for 2 hours, it was finally my turn to sleep. I found a free spot and lay down. Then I pretended to doze off. Of course, even though this guy looks friendly and has no intention to harm me, how can I trust someone I just met? But for the next 2 hours, nothing happened. I somehow stubbornly endured this time. I started to feel regretful. I should have slept properly. Now it's his turn to sleep. I sat beside him, still considering whether this person was trustworthy. I can barely keep my eyes open now. Suddenly, Hans slapped me awake. I had fallen asleep during my watch. To apologize, I let the old man sleep a little longer, but the old man still forgave me with a cheerful smile. But the more the uncle acts like this, the more suspicious he seems. He gives the impression of being deceptively kind, like a con man. He was the first one to suggest we shouldn't look for the other members, and he didn't blame me for the smell. He even refused the offer of sleeping in again. Because in this treacherous labyrinth, being overly enthusiastic towards others upon first meeting, always feels out of sync. When I lay down again and started to overthink, my body's instinctive sense of danger arrived. Suddenly, I opened my eyes. What came into view was the uncle's smiling face, but his hands were raised, holding a large hammer. It was about to swing down toward my face. Having a body trained as a warrior, I instinctively dodged to the side in that critical moment. When he saw that I had actually avoided his attack, the uncle showed a panicked expression. I instantly felt a surge of killing intent. I grabbed the shield and slammed it down on the uncle. His face was already swollen and red. His nose was also bleeding. The uncle's strength, slightly stronger than goblins. No wonder they resort to such underhanded tactics. Now the bruised and swollen uncle kneels on the ground. I slowly walk up to him. I question him why he ambushed me. He hurriedly explains that he only wanted my shield and magic stones. However, I didn't believe him, because losing an adventurer in the labyrinth is a very serious crime. No one would attack someone else for such a small amount of supplies. I could see he wasn't telling the truth. I immediately used my powerful vitral leg, striking his chin. Then I stepped on him, and asked again. Only then did he hurriedly tell the truth. It turned out that the barbarian's heart was a newly developed magical material. If I could obtain the barbarian's heart, it could be exchanged for an unimaginable reward. That's why he thought of ambushing me while I was sound asleep. Just when he thought that by revealing everything, he could spare his life. I smiled sweetly at the corner of my mouth. Then, I raised my shield. He slammed it down hard. Then he received a system notification. First kill completed. And he also received a large hammer, leather boots, a pocket watch, and a backpack, along with everything else on him. The goblins I encountered on the way, I could kill them with one strike. But the feeling of fatigue was becoming more and more intense. I decided to team up with my fellow tribesmen this time. But the situation I encountered along the way was completely different from yesterday. People kept inviting me to join their teams and rest. But facing humanity, I find it hard to trust them again. After I refused their invitation, I learned from their reply that the barbarians, at this time, had already entered the second level of the maze. The only choices left are other races. The elves, who value their agreements, and also the dwarves, as unrestrained as barbarians. After wandering in the maze for about an hour, I finally discovered a wandering member of a different race. The moment our eyes met, a strange, suffocating silence fell. Xiao Heng said lightly, the elven woman before me. Xiao Ting said lightly, just a moment ago, she was confident and aloof. Xiao Ting said lightly, but the next second, she appeared pitiful. Just before that, this pointy-eared elf girl was sitting with her back against the wall, silently watching me. She also seemed to have no night companion, dozing off alone. Her amber eyes shone like a cat's. But the posture is unnatural. Look, I see an abdominal wound. It's not deep, but it's a long gash. This is definitely not an injury a goblin could inflict. So I asked, were you injured by a human? The elf woman didn't answer in time. I guess I look too intimidating. Of course, I understand. Even I, when injured, would be startled to see a big brute like me approaching, especially if the other person is female. Just as I was thinking this, suddenly, the elf girl fell to the ground with a thud, without hesitation. Unknowingly, her eyes filled with tears. Sir, please don't hurt me. I have elderly parents to care for and younger siblings to support. Please let me go. This elf woman is so spineless. Honestly, I thought she'd be the cold and ruthless type. My impression of elf women is that they're pretty cold-blooded. If I'd known she was this type of character, I would have approached her more gently. Then, to avoid further misunderstandings, I gave her a smile first. And incidentally, I said, don't be afraid, I won't hurt you. The eyes are the window to the soul. Given enough time to calm down, the other person will know I'm telling the truth. Before the words were out, do you really have to do this? Barbarian RD, uncle. Bullshit, what the hell have I done? It feels like I'm the exhibitionist jerk bullying high schoolers outside the school gate. But I'm clearly just a barbarian. Just once, please let me go just this once. The longer my silence lasts, the more pathetically the elf girl begs for mercy. It's just speechless. What kind of lives do these barbarians live? How can their image be so terrible? I involuntarily sighed. Let's treat the injury first. We can talk about the rest later. Then I stepped back. I took out herbs and bandages from my bag and threw them over. Seeing these herbs, the elf woman looked at me questioningly. Why treat her with herbs and help her? I unconsciously asked several questions. Does helping need a reason? Speaking without thinking. For some reason, I felt a stinging sensation in my words. But I had no choice but to dispel her doubts. Then I continued, explaining. I need a knight companion. Although, in this situation, saying that makes me sound like a terrible person. It's definitely not a bad thing for her. Injured. Lack of sleep. And on top of that, her beautiful appearance. No matter how you look at it, her condition is several times worse than mine. Then I turned around as well. Let her tend to her wound first. But not long after, I heard that she had already bandaged up the wound. That was fast. Didn't expect her skills to be so good. It seemed like the wariness in her eyes had lessened a bit. Taking the opportunity, I introduced myself. My name is Bjorn, the son of the barbarian Yandel. She weakly uttered the name, Owen. Presumably, Owen is her name. Although I don't know what you misunderstood. Nothing you're thinking will happen. She replied, I understand. But the fear in her eyes remained. She still couldn't let down her guard. I asked her directly. Why were you so afraid of me? She then began to explain. Because, decades ago, orcs and elves were enemies. Although the war is over, he'll be terrified to see me now. This is also the first time I've heard that barbarians and elves are enemies. Owen swore at this moment, saying that he harbored no ill will towards barbarians. I don't want to fight you either. Hearing her words, I looked at her seriously. I have no ill intentions towards you either. So, will you be my partner for the night? Just for one night. You must be very tired too, right now. Why don't we cooperate? Listen to me. Erwin furrowed his brow. She remembered that the barbarians placed great value on credibility. So she asked me to swear on my warrior's honor, that I wouldn't hurt her. Hearing this, I also swore to him on my honor as a warrior. Meanwhile, Owen swore in the name of the tribe not to harm me. Now I can finally get a good night's sleep. Then I gave Owen my pocket watch, and told him to wake me in 2 hours. But just in case, I still pretended to sleep for 10 more minutes. Suddenly, Owen's voice woke me up. I groggily got up. He told me 2 hours had passed. I don't even know when I fell asleep. Maybe the blanket and duvet were just too comfortable. I must have fallen asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. So I lent the blanket to Owen. She felt very warm, and immediately fell asleep. She seems tired too. She must have had a tough day like I did. Finally, I have some free time. Without realizing it, I start thinking about what has happened in reality. Will anyone come to see me? Does anyone know I'm missing? Forget it. I don't want to think about it anymore. Even if I went back, I wouldn't find what I'm looking for. More than an hour has passed. I only have 10 minutes left before I need to wake Owen up. I looked at Owen. I thought this elf woman could be useful in battle. It seems I could make her a long-term companion. While I was lost in thought, 2 humans passed by. They saw I was with the female elf. They came over to ask what my relationship with the elf was, but I didn't give them a pleasant look. I signaled for them to leave quickly. Under my pressure, they withdrew reluctantly, but their whispering expressions, I had a bad feeling. These 2 people are probably here to find Owen, so I quickly woke up Owen. When I woke Owen up and told him not to sleep, she actually said she wanted to sleep for 5 more minutes. Is it possible to still be asleep when you might not even have a life left? Xiaoheng said, the innocent and lovely elf before my eyes, Xiaoko said, could actually render a man incapable of having children. Just before that, when I called Owen to wake up, she was still pretending to sleep, because when those 2 people came, I secretly checked. This girl deliberately covered her face with a blanket, even though she was already awake. To avoid wasting time arguing, I directly grabbed her shoulders and forcefully helped her up. Why pretend to be asleep? She, startled by me, vaguely avoided my gaze. For me, who needs to get information and make a judgment as quickly as possible. This is a very frustrating attitude. When I grasped her chin, when she looked into my eyes, Owen could only helplessly say, if I wake up, I'm worried you'll leave me alone. That's true. She and I are currently just night partners. We watch each other's backs, protecting each other. The moment Owen opened his eyes, the vows between us were over. I let out a deep breath first, and then asked what relationship he had with the 2 people who were looking for you earlier. They have no relation, but the badges on their clothes, just like the ones who wanted to harm me before, they must be from the same group. Hearing this, I couldn't help but curse. Not just 2 people, but an entire group. Things just got worse. I even started to feel distressed. Is this where I say goodbye to this elf? But looking at her, she seems to be around 20 years old. A sense of pity welled up in my heart. So I decided to take her out of this dangerous place first. Then, while running, I also learned the rest of the situation. The first night, she made a one-night stand arrangement with a man, but in the middle of the night, she heard a strange sound. When she opened her eyes and looked across, the man had taken off his pants and was attempting to perform oral sex. She barely managed to escape successfully. That man's colleague would attack her whenever they saw her. The injuries to her body were also caused by this. Later, she learned from one of the attackers that the man before was the leader of a group called Correction Union, and everyone in this group has an information stone. These information stones can resonate with each other, and are devices that allow communication within a 300-meter diameter. This is really adding insult to injury. They have a lot of manpower and communication tools. If we let this go on, she'll definitely be caught. It sounds like she didn't do anything wrong. Why is the whole group chasing after her? When I asked her about the key point again, this female elf actually gave me a naive expression, and said something astonishing. She actually cut off the other party's manhood. I can completely understand why she's been chasing relentlessly. At this moment, Owen suddenly spoke up. We've got a pursuer on our tail, about 150 meters away. She doesn't seem to be lying. It must be the innate keen perception of an elf. So I took her and increased our speed, but the pursuer remained the same distance behind. In this situation, the tracker will also tell the group our location. It would be very dangerous if that happened. But right now, I'm still conflicted. If the target on the other side is me, I would definitely eliminate him without a second thought. But right now, it's the elf woman's problem. If I get involved, I'll definitely be implicated in this mess later. To make a decision quickly, when I asked her what she was best at, she actually replied, washing clothes, cooking, cleaning. I'm speechless because of this elf. After realizing, she added that her greatest strength is archery. She can also use fire magic. She's a standard archer, plus her precious fire attribute. Her current fighting ability would be helpful for my exploration of this maze. So I seriously asked her if she wanted to become my true partner until the end of this maze. The reward distribution is 9 for me, 1 for you. And I haven't finished explaining the other conditions yet. But this girl actually shouted ahead of time. I agree, I agree. At this moment, the pursuers behind us are getting closer. And right now, I see an opening ahead. So I ordered Owen to unleash fire magic. When we reached the cave entrance and extinguished the flames, we saw our relentless pursuers. And that's why I came here. Owen had already assumed his archery stance. When the tracker came into view, Erwin shot the arrow without hesitation. You could feel Erwin trembling beside me. His whole body was shaking. This was probably because it was his first time killing someone. Then I stepped out of the darkness to examine the body. But this tracker, in order to increase speed, actually didn't carry any backpack. He only held an information stone in his hand. At this moment, the information stone was still transmitting sound. When we failed to respond for a long time, the other party also sensed something was wrong. The information stone transmitted the message. The tracker has perished. 99. Everyone who hears this now, all JH, head to the goblin area. The pure girl from a moment ago, now a cold-blooded killer, shouting talks casually, but right now her bounty has already reached tens of thousands of gold coins. Not long ago, I completely stripped the tracker of their equipment, from head to toe. Then I sorted through the items I obtained one by one. I thought I'd find something good. In the end, there wasn't much. Just a heavy bag of jewels, 2 daggers, and a crossbow, and a set of armor the fellow wore before. Owen put on the new armor. It looks a little loose overall, but it's quite nice after putting on the waist belt. Maybe it's the change of clothes. Her temperament has also changed. Now she looks more like a dignified female warrior. Then I picked up the information stone, and while I was studying it, the guild master's voice came from it again. Sheldon, who was pursuing the sprite, is dead. Her location is in the goblin region. She then added, she's with a barbarian who holds a hammer and a shield. She even raised the bounty to 10,000 gold coins. That's quite a generous offer. Hearing this, Owen was first shocked. Immediately, she looked up at me with uneasy eyes, and I gently reassured her. Don't worry, I'll take her away from here. Under my determined gaze, this girl instantly became my fan. Because before this, when I tracked down the killer, I decided to help her. The reason is simple. I simply like helping those in need. Provided, of course, that she's of value to me. Then we used her spark. We headed to the second level of the labyrinth. On the way, I analyzed the situation with Owen. If we stay near the entrance to the second level, with just the two of us, there shouldn't be too much danger. I also added, the coordination between her and I is very seamless. Close range and long range attacks have always been the perfect combination, and there's barely enough loot for 2 people to share. While Owen was still concerned about the unknowns of the second floor, the information stone conveniently delivered the content from Ian. If you catch the sprite, you'll not only get 10,000 gold coins, but also priority access. The timing of this news is perfect. It saves me from having to persuade her. According to my memory of the game, if you don't know the route, just keep going north and you'll reach the entrance. After walking for a while, I saw the first goblin trap, but it appeared much later than I expected. Considering how I first entered the maze, a trap should have appeared much sooner. A place with no light. Aren't there fewer goblins? When I thought of this, I suddenly felt a heavy gloom in my heart. I've been stuck in the dark from the very beginning, and almost stepped on a trap, nearly losing my life. How unlucky am I? Maybe he thought this was a chance to show off. Owen confidently walked up to me. The moment the goblin jumped out, he nimbly dodged the attack. Then, at point-blank range, he fired an arrow. She easily took out a few goblins. Her skill is far better than I expected. Her movements are very agile. In a short while, Owen, having finished off the goblins, looked at me triumphantly. Well done. Your archery is truly elven. Hearing this, Owen blushed with happiness. Then she held out her small hand, holding 2 trophies in it. It turned out that she still remembered my request from earlier while we were running. She said confidently, according to the current progress, I might even be able to earn a fortune. After a period of silence during the following journey, the information stone transmitted another message. This time, the bounty was raised to 20,000 gold coins. In other words, there are definitely enemies within 300 meters. It was probably an instinctive fear of something going wrong. Owen quietly approached me. Following my unlucky destiny, something bad should be happening now, but this unsettling quiet made me uneasy. It was exactly as I expected. Owen, beside me, suddenly pointed ahead and cried out. When she moved the flame forward, I saw that there was actually a group of zombies ahead. Rotten skin, vacant eyes. These things, in my memory, should only exist in the south. Have we wandered near the danger zone? Although we've been heading north, whenever we hit a dead end, we can only turn around. It's also possible we've ended up going the wrong way. At this point, Owen was no longer as confident as before. Instead, he nervously stood behind me. After I shared the general strategy with her, I slowly walked away. There were 3 zombies blocking the passage ahead. If it were like a game, these zombies would only attack if I got within a certain range. As I carefully took another step, the 3 zombie claws pounced at the same time. Although they are stronger than goblins, they are still only rank 9 monsters. So, it was more than enough to defeat them. I even had reliable companions by my side. Afterward, we leveled up while heading north. Unbeknownst to us, 3 days have already passed. And then Owen discovered a dark red line drawn on the ground. It's blood, and it doesn't look like a goblin's. And this trail of blood leads directly to where we're going. I don't know why. I think I know whose bloodstains these are. After we followed the blood trail for a bit longer, I became even more certain of my thoughts. And ahead, there were sandals thrown on the ground and a trap. I couldn't help but swear. What the hell is this? I just entered the maze, and behind me was actually the entrance to the second floor. What kind of joke is this? If I had gone in the opposite direction back then, if I hadn't triggered that trap, my luck really is just awful. Xiaoheng said, this man has shed his greasy, lecherous image, and instead gained a naive and adorable fairy. But this fairy is being offered a high price for capture, and in order to escape the enemy's pursuit, we were forced to enter the second level of the maze. The moment we stepped through the second level's gate, my body plummeted from a great height. The feeling was like being chewed relentlessly in a frog's mouth, then spat out with disgust. I landed heavily on the ground with a thud. Meanwhile, Owen quickly regained his balance. She landed perfectly intact. I could once again feel that this girl has really good physical conditioning. This kind of agility is something a barbarian like me can't have. At the same time, we also heard the system notification that we had entered the second floor. After looking around, I confirmed through memory that this is the goblin forest located in the northern part of the second floor. There's a passage behind me that allows me to return to the first floor at any time. I don't see any living creatures around at the moment. Each entrance on this floor leads to different monsters. The north is the goblin forest. The east is the beast's nest. The west belongs to the Jianghu faction. The south belongs to Blackrock Mountain. And the way to return to the city from this maze is, at the appointed time, the explorers will be spat out of the maze and back into the city. Those not-so-united people who are hunting us, it shouldn't be possible for them to chase us to the second floor. Therefore, I decided to hold out on the second floor until the end, and head back just before the first floor ends. But I can't just sit here and wait for time to pass. So I decided to scout the surrounding area first. It's probably because we've reached the woods. Owen beside her exclaimed, as if they had returned to their elven homeland. Knowing that they were surrounded by goblin territory, she was still as happy as a child. At the same time, she was utilizing her elven keen senses, clearing goblin traps ahead. But what's strange is, there are traps here, but no goblins have been found, unlike the first floor. Besides the fixed traps, the goblins here usually operate in groups of 10 or more. There are even mutated goblin archers among them. Of course, the closer we get to the outer perimeter, the more mutated species we'll encounter. But we plan to operate near the entrance. Therefore, those mutated goblins won't pose an immediate threat to us. We widened the area by throwing stones to clear traps. This is also to make it easier in case we have problems escaping. Once we've expanded to a certain range, Owen spotted the goblin group ahead of time. Under her questioning gaze, I decided to deal with the goblins. Then she slowly pushed through the grass towards the goblins. On the path littered with branches and plants, her steps made not a single sound. Once again, I am amazed by the agility of the elf. Soon after, Owen stopped in her tracks. She waved at me, and then, at my signal, she took up her bow and aimed at the goblin. With the release of the arrow as the starting point, I immediately charged forward. The monsters on the second floor are definitely different. First, there are 3 times as many as on the first floor. And there are new species like goblin swordsmen. But surprisingly, I'm not scared at all. Instead, excitement fills my whole body. It must be because of the physical characteristics this body possesses. The reason for a warrior's battle-hungry heartbeat. Watching the goblins charging head-on, I used my tightly held warhammer to strike their temples. One punch, one small fry, they were instantly sent flying. Some goblins haven't even hit the ground yet. It just became a halo and disappeared. But it's too early to celebrate. I've only just taken out the first few. Goblins were now swarming me from all sides. But the instinctive sense of danger coming from behind was even stronger. It was a goblin swordsman. If I had been just a little later, I could have lost my head. They didn't even give me a chance to breathe. Usually, 5 or more ordinary goblins are already a huge threat. If it had been just me, facing this group of monsters in front of me, I have to be prepared to get hurt if I want to win. But it's different now. I have a great companion. An arrow shot from the bushes pierced through a goblin's forehead. It looks like Owen has found a good position for JJ. I quickly got back on my feet. Then, I charged toward the center of the enemy lines again with my shield. It's time to end this horde of monsters. Shortly after, facing the first group of goblins, we collected 11 rubies. Compared to the 44 we could only collect in a whole day on the first floor. This is a very satisfactory result. The only regret is that the goblin swordsman's equipment vanished with their deaths. But it also makes one anticipate how much we'll gain from staying here for 4 days. Shouting said that this man, after countless goblin kills, finally learned the legendary 18 dragon subduing palms. Just a short while ago, we used the single entrance as a center point, and expanded our exploration range to 3 kilometers. At the same time, we naturally encountered groups of goblins. They appeared in batches at 5-minute intervals. There are even goblin archers in this group. These creatures are indeed very threatening. They can even use invisibility magic. But as long as you stay focused, you can react to the incoming arrows. When they expose their bodies, even barbarians would die instantly if they were shot in the head. So if I can get back to town, I absolutely have to prioritize buying a helmet. After we finished the battle again, I found an open space. I decided to recover my XT power before exploring further. When I asked her if she needed a nap first, this girl really didn't know what politeness was. When I set down the heavy package and handed her the blanket, in less than a minute, I heard her snoring. Compared to a barbarian, this sound is incredibly delicate. She must be truly tired, because until now, she's never made a sound while sleeping. Maybe it's because, right now, she feels safer than ever before. We've been hunting continuously for 15 hours, although we face more than 10 goblins each time. But as our skill improves, dangerous situations have decreased, and we're eliminating them faster and faster. Therefore, I've also reaped many rewards. But it's not without tense moments. With the expansion of the radius, I also started encountering explorers. These were teams of 3 or more people. Among them were also teams including other races. Whenever we meet, although it's customary to keep our distance and brush past each other, these encounters always leave me exhausted. I fear these adventurers' attacks more than goblins. Now there's an even more pressing reason to be wary. That is, this girl's beauty is a big problem. I looked at Owen, who was fast asleep. I couldn't help but sigh. Although we've been sleeping rough for days, her silver hair and captivating amber eyes excitedly asked back, "Am I that pretty?" She, who seemed to still be asleep, after my cold rejection, once again started snoring loudly. After we entered the goblin forest, days 4, 5, and 6 flew by. And now it's the final 7th day. We've finally made it to the moment we can leave the maze. There are 2 hours and 47 minutes left until the entrance on the first floor closes. There's only one way to leave the maze and return to town. That's to wait until the entrance completely closes. Then, once the stipulated time arrives, the maze will eject all the explorers on that floor back to the town. In other words, the higher the floor, the longer you spend in the maze. But we plan to leave the maze by reaching the first floor before the 7th day ends. There are several reasons why we want to leave early. Once the stay time on the first layer runs out, the entrance will disappear as well. In other words, under uncertain circumstances, our escape route will also vanish. And on top of that, our food supply is running low. I could also trade food with other explorers using rubies, but that would add unnecessary complications. More importantly, Owen only has fewer than 10 arrows left. This leaves me with little protection in an unknown battle. This would leave me unprepared for any unexpected encounters. After hunting for a while again, we confirmed the remaining time, and decided to start heading back to the entrance on the first floor. We are currently about 4 kilometers away from the entrance. As we retraced our steps, we unknowingly came across some freshly reset traps in the forest. In other words, the goblin group we had previously eliminated reappeared. At that moment, Irvin, who was walking ahead, stopped. He had spotted another group of goblins not far ahead. We didn't exchange much conversation. After I nodded, Irvin, as usual, led the way through the grass, searching for the next target. Then I charged to the front, attacking that group of goblins. As I roared in their midst, the goblins actually hesitated. It must have been my imposing aura. In that moment of hesitation, I quickly pulled out my hammer. I then one-shot that goblin swordsman in the head. I could also feel that I had been through many fierce battles. Unknowingly, I had already mastered the essentials of these group battles. Plus, Owen beside me was gradually improving his combat ability. The 2 archers in this group didn't even fire a single arrow before being killed by Owen in advance. This shortened the time it took to finish them off. Afterward, when we were about to collect the loot and leave, Owen spotted something strange not far away. It was something floating in the air, light orbs about the size of a fist. Though this is my first time seeing them with my own eyes, I can confirm that this is the essence of a goblin. This is a treasure that explorers rarely encounter. Its abilities vary depending on the type. It can grant the absorber passive and active skills. Even the cultivation of different essences can decide the fate of this character. Although each explorer can only absorb one essence, it's enough to make others risk their lives for it. It just so happens that this is the essence of the goblin archer. Under Owen's greedy gaze, I also decided to let her have this opportunity. At the same time, I had a bad feeling about this sudden good fortune. I had a premonition of something bad, because up to now, I've only encountered misfortune. When I thought my difficult life was finally starting to improve, the sound of uninvited guests came from a distance. This group of people shamelessly shouted. This treasure was something they had their eye on beforehand. Let's quickly put down our things and leave here. This is a group of 4 human explorers. They spotted us from afar. With a serious expression, they quickly closed the distance. And I, upon seeing their arrival, felt strangely and perversely comfortable inside. Xiaoheng said, apparently, this international gesture, Xiaoheng said, works everywhere. Xiaoheng's rambling even included the in-game world. When Owen was about to pick up the WQ, I threw her forward directly. In the process, it just happened to come into contact with the goblin essence in the air, and the essence instantly emitted a light. Then it wrapped around Owen's body and slowly dissipated. Seeing that their target had been absorbed, the 4 latecomers began to yell at us. Facing them, I stepped forward without a trace of nervousness. If you want to fight, come on. No matter how many, I'll take you on. Even though I'm outnumbered, I show even stronger fighting spirit. Because in this world, if you're underestimated, you'll be devoured immediately. Then, under my strong attitude, these people actually chose to leave. Afterward, I instructed Owen to head to the first floor entrance as quickly as possible. Although I'm not sure if they will follow us, what is certain is, their destination is also the entrance to the first floor. Because they are a team of 4. With their strength, they would have no problem operating on the second floor. But they're lingering at the entrance. They must be in the same situation as us. I plan to return to the town on the 7th day. Upon hearing this analysis, Irvin didn't have too many questions. He mentioned that speed should lead the way ahead. She should have noticed it too. Although there was no direct confrontation. But even before safely leaving the maze, danger was ever present. Just then, Owen spotted a group of goblins. As I was planning to avoid them and head back to the entrance, Owen hurriedly said, "This goblin horde is charging at us." Since entering the second floor, goblins have never attacked us proactively. Because of Owen's keen perception, we could avoid them beforehand. But this is unusual. It is absolutely impossible that this is just a coincidence. When I was about to dodge the goblins in the opposite direction, an arrow suddenly shot toward the back of my head. The force of the arrow didn't seem like it was from a goblin's craftsmanship. I quickly made a judgment. Those people must have lured the goblins here. They're probably ambushing us from the opposite direction. They likely used the goblins to weaken us before finishing us off. At that moment, I made a decision. I decided to deal with these goblins first. So I asked Owen to directly use the essence skill he had just acquired, Goblin Archer Essence. Based on the game mechanics, it should be an invisibility skill. This is a skill that can be activated through willpower without needing to be triggered. I then asked the invisible Owen to find the 4 guys behind us. But I'll stay and face this horde of goblins alone. Given the current situation, there's really no better way. Under Owen's worried gaze, I instructed her. I'll signal her later. Make sure you kill the enemy archers with 1 shot. Don't reveal your stealth until then. Then, while Owen looked completely bewildered, I ran straight back. It wasn't long before I saw the goblins chasing after me. I still don't know. There are two that look like swordmasters. No goblin arrows have flown yet. That means the goblin archers are also hiding in the shadows. The current situation is, I have to avoid the goblin archers, and also watch out for that group of human archers. I even had to kill this mob of trash in front of me. When I blocked the arrows with my shield, the goblin swordsman at the rear seized the opportunity, and stabbed me in the back. Without Owen's help, I had to face these guys alone. Injuries to the body are an inevitable circumstance. Although the number of goblins is decreasing, the accumulated injuries are only growing. Just when I finally had a moment to catch my breath, two arrows shot towards me at the same time, and they came from two different directions, front and back. One is a goblin, and the other is the work of that group from HD. It's impossible to block two arrows at the same time, so I chose to block the arrow flying from the side with my shield. The sound was completely different from that of the goblin archers. When I blocked the human archer's arrow with my shield, the arrow from behind deeply embedded into my left arm. I took an arrow, and my left arm instantly became paralyzed, because the arrow struck my elbow, and it was also poisoned. Right now, I can only use my right arm. If I had to choose between a hammer and a shield, I would choose the shield without hesitation, because the real enemy now is that group of HD, not the goblins in front of us. Although a hammer can easily destroy these goblins, it's seeing it fend off hidden arrows. When only 3 goblins remain, these monsters also feel my terror. They didn't resist desperately. Instead, they chose to escape. Although they were covered in wounds, they still won the first round. At the same time, with the sound of praise, this group of HD appeared from the hidden woods, but only 3 appeared. That means, the enemy archers are still hiding in the shadows. I don't know if Owen found them this time. And as for their appearance, I didn't show any sign of panic. Instead, I looked at them with cold eyes. My left arm still hurts when I move it, but it's time to send a signal to Owen. To make the people of this world notice it as a signal, it has to be a unique gesture. And that is, the universally recognized friendly gesture. Xiaoheng said, "This is clearly an enemy we see in the defeat, but we miraculously achieved victory." Xiaoheng said, "It's because in this world, we've cast the magic of love." It happened just recently. After exchanging glances with his accomplices, the red-haired man across from me took a large step forward, and said to me, "First, I'll subdue you, then we'll talk about Owen's whereabouts." He even said he would treat me as a major boss in the game. Just then, I slowly raised my left hand, and slowly raised my middle finger. I gave them a standard international gesture. This should be a unique gesture, understood by anyone, anywhere. And this gesture immediately startled the people in front of her. You can see the confusion in their eyes. But this gesture didn't bring any change, because they didn't see Owen's bow and arrow. Could it be that the distance was too far for her to see it? But I couldn't care less. I immediately picked up my WQ, and charged towards the red-haired man ahead. The red-haired man I targeted, however, retreated while urgently calling out another person's name. A man in a straw hat stepped forward and blocked my attack. This man's strength was truly formidable. He must be the strongest in their group. No matter how strong he is, I can't back down. I have to disperse them. So Owen has a chance for a decisive blow. And just as I thought that, an arrow suddenly flew towards us. While everyone present was shocked, the arrow was blocked by the man with the sword and shield. No wonder that kid stayed still the whole time. Then the kid shouted loudly, "Let the others focus on defeating me. I will personally defend against the arrows." So this group of had already made detailed plans in advance. And at that moment, the red-haired man behind me cunningly raised his sword. He actually aimed for my injured left arm. Luckily, I reacted in time, and the wound wasn't too deep. But this left arm is no longer usable normally. I directly abandoned the defense of my left arm. I charged straight at the red-haired man ahead. It was a good trade. Meanwhile, I desperately used my shield to knock the straw hat warrior aside. At that moment, another arrow of reinforcements shot in. I'm not sure if Owen changed the position of J. This time, the force was noticeably much stronger, and it even carried the attribute of fire magic. Meanwhile, unable to withstand the fire, the shield-bearing man could only throw his shield away. The moment the bothersome shield disappeared, Owen didn't hesitate to shoot another arrow. And this time, he finally hit the shield-bearing man's shoulder accurately. As he was injured, he could only drop his right-hand sword to the ground. Now, this kid, WQ, has no weapons in both hands. He's become a useless fellow. Seeing the battle turning unfavorable for his side, the red-haired man finally reacted. He ordered the straw hat warrior to hold me off. He ran off towards the jungle. He must be going to look for Owen. But I was held up by the people in front of me. Right now, I can only trust Owen's abilities. When I struck the straw hat warrior directly with my shield, He didn't even try to block it, but he avoided my attack. I followed through with my momentum and directly aimed at the shielded man behind him. One strike shattered his skull. Now, only the Straw Hat Warrior is left. From our few exchanges, I can feel that the Straw Hat Warrior's strength is very formidable. I really don't know why he's hanging around with these bugs, but this will be the biggest mistake of his life. When I attacked with my shield, the Straw Hat Swordsman skillfully distanced himself from me, and that was exactly what I expected. I took the opportunity to abandon my shield. I reached out my right hand and grabbed him. The Straw Hat Samurai, grabbed by the collar, instantly showed a confused expression. This must have been unexpected. At that moment, I used my powerful right hand to pull him back. Then, using my mouth in place of my immobile left arm, I viciously tore open the samurai's throat. The warrior didn't even have time to cry out. He just left this world. The battle here had just ended, and Owen appeared in the bushes, panting. I spat the meat out of my mouth onto the ground, and wiped my mouth with my arm. Owen looks unharmed at this moment. He must have dealt with the red-haired man smoothly. This battle is finally over. Although it's a victory, the cost was high. Owen is anxiously watching from the side. His eyes are filled with anxious tears. Looking at the heavily wounded man before me, he took a potion from his waist and handed it to me. I didn't express much. I simply took the potion and swallowed it down in one gulp. Not long after, I could feel something boiling inside me. At the same time, a painful sensation spreads through every blood vessel, and the skin all over my body starts to itch. It's a feeling as if I'm about to go crazy. Fortunately, this sensation quickly disappears. Then, I asked what time it was. It had been less than 40 minutes since the first floor entrance closed. I couldn't care about the situation anymore. I shouted directly at Owen, "Quick, take off your clothes." But for some reason, this girl misunderstood. She blushed and started taking off her own clothes, and I was just speechless. He explained again. It's not about having her wear the TY uniform, but about quickly stripping off the equipment from these underground bodies. Once that was done, only about 30 minutes were left. From this moment on, we had no choice but to forcibly start the marathon. After some time passed, the entrance to the first floor slowly appeared before us. When less than 40 seconds remained, we finally successfully entered the first floor entrance. The feeling of being back on the first floor wasn't much different from entering the second floor. It was the same. I am still sitting on the ground in the posture of a wolf or fox. Meanwhile, Owen stands beside me, completely unharmed. At this moment, Owen is as happy as a child. He even shouted, "This is so interesting." He looked so delighted. Then, I relaxed my sore body. I stood up from my seat. At this moment, there was less than 10 seconds left. We just looked at each other. I had planned to say goodbye this way, but then I suddenly remembered we hadn't divided the spoils, so I quickly thought of a place name. He hurriedly shouted to Owen, "Black Whale, let's meet at the Black Whale bar after we get out." As the sound faded, our vision instantly became a bright light. We also heard the system's voice, "Closed maze. The character is heading towards the town of Rafdonia." Shouting you man. In the dead of night, Xiaoheng said, "You called a young woman to this kind of bar." Xiaoheng asked man, "What's your purpose?" Xiaoheng said to man, "Just a short while ago." Xiaoting said, "After I left the secret realm through teleportation, I unknowingly stared blankly at the sky. It really has been such a long time since I last saw it, but I still haven't felt its warmth. I was suddenly disturbed by the surrounding noise, which broke my peace. It even made me doubt, were we transported somewhere else? But after hearing their conversation, I gradually came to believe that this is a city outside the labyrinth, because all the explorers who entered the labyrinth have gathered here. I never expected that there would be so many explorers inside. Then I adjusted the clock to 12 o'clock, because the time in the maze is different from the time in the city. In the maze, no matter how long you spend, according to city time, it's only one day. Therefore, as long as I get out of the maze, time will be fixed at 12 noon the next day. When I finished all this, I suddenly heard a familiar call. Those adorable eyes, that boisterous voice. I recognized him, but I couldn't remember his name. Finally, I remembered it from his self-introduction. So his name is Karak, the third son of Parai. All barbarians in this world are named with their father's name first, followed by their birth order and their own name. I haven't even had a chance to speak to him properly. Barbarian warriors appeared from nowhere, one after another. It was like a class reunion. Ignoring the people around them, they shouted out long names, in incredibly loud voices, greeting each other, and complimenting each other's gear. They really are amazing. They don't seem very bright, yet they memorized such long names so well. Then I heard Karak's voice. He said they were going to exchange gold coins, and asked if I wanted to go with them. Then I cleared my throat, trying to answer in a loud voice, "I'm going too." But the reply I heard was, "You look tired," and that my voice lacked strength. I always thought that the barbarian role I was playing was perfect, but his words, instantly made me lose my confidence. Then, under Karak's guidance, we went together to the testing facility. This seems to be a necessary process for barbarians to measure their harvest within the maze. It's a necessary process one must go through. At this moment, the leading Karluk shouted loudly. He wants to prove his bravery as a warrior. Here. This place is like a supermarket checkout counter. A group of people is gathered here, waiting for the settlement. Especially the lady sitting at the front desk. Her hand speed is like a machine. She quickly converts the gold coins. Karak's combat power is indeed quite impressive. The exchange for other warriors is only a bit over 20,000 gold coins. He actually exchanged for over 40,000 gold coins. Immediately, the other barbarian warriors nearby surrounded Karak, praising him as the best among warriors. Then I slowly walked to the front, taking out the 3 prepared storage bags. Amidst the receptionist's incredibly fast typing, my results quickly came out. A total of 182,413 gold coins. When this number echoed through the hall, these barbaric warriors instantly surrounded me, because the value of 180,000 was their highest record ever. Then, someone discovered I still had a warhammer, boots, pauldrons, etc. in my hands. This was a result that made them envious. I understand their enthusiastic reaction, because, entering the maze naked, when I came out, I had evolved into a barbarian of civilization. I should have been the first, and amidst their excessive praise, my body began to thrill with excitement. I am the greatest warrior. With my shout, the barbarian warriors were instantly caught in a frenzied vortex. With their simple minds, their enthusiasm comes quickly, and it fades just as fast. Soon, we were all sitting together in the center of the square. There might be other newbie processes that I don't know about yet. So here I am, waiting with everyone else for the other barbarians. At that moment, I saw Owen surrounded by a group of handsome men and beautiful women, excitedly exchanging words. The scene was truly enviable, because all I had around me were these rough and uncouth men. Just then, Owen secretly glanced at me. Okay. Just then, the elf beside Owen and the Karluk beside me simultaneously exclaimed, "You know each other." When I said I didn't, Karluk actually shouted loudly, "As the strongest warrior, you could never possibly know those despicable elves." At that moment, I really wanted to shut this guy up, but it was too late. Because the voice was too loud, the surrounding elves immediately glared at us with fierce eyes. These simple-minded guys are really driving me crazy. It's really getting on my nerves. Just at this crucial moment, the last few barbarian warriors also exchanged their coins and came out. Anyway, there's no point staying here any longer. I might not even be able to talk to Owen, so I decided to lead these people away first. When we reached a certain distance, we saw a heartbreaking scene. Although I've played this game countless times, I never expected such emotions exist even within a truly immersive game world. The joy of an explorer's family or friends, and the sorrow of losing loved ones. When I truly face scenes I can't see through a screen, my heart grows heavy. Cut 2. I stared blankly at this group of crazy people. There was only one reason I decided I had to go with them. I was afraid there was another newbie mission I didn't know about, but I never expected the next stop to be a bar. And it started in broad daylight. It's going to be a non-stop drinking spree. Staying with them any longer would be a waste of my time. So I suddenly stood up and declared that I had somewhere to go and need to leave. Although they looked at me with surprise, they shouted loudly, saying things like, "I'm the protagonist this time, I can't leave." But under my stubborn insistence, they could only watch helplessly as I left. After parting with them, I wandered aimlessly through the city. Although I have a destination, my current feeling is that I just want to keep walking. The scenery here makes me feel quite peaceful. The first time I saw this city was at midnight, but now it's daytime, so the streets are crowded. There are no monsters here, and no one will hurt me. There are even laws and rules here. If it's here, I could even fall asleep on the street, and still be safe and sound. Or before that, someone else might offer help first. Of course, I also know that it's incredibly backward compared to 21st century Earth. But even so, it's still peaceful. Perhaps, living in this city, it should be a good decision, too. Lost in my own thoughts, I unknowingly drifted off to sleep. When I opened my eyes again, it was already past 9 p.m. I exited the maze around noon, so I slept for about 4 or 5 hours. I slowly got up, and headed to the whale bar where I had a date with Owen. After asking around, I finally found the bar. It looked completely different from what I saw in the game. When I pushed open the door and entered, what came into view was a messy scene. At that moment, I heard an excited shout. Owen had arrived here ahead of time, but beside her was sitting another female elf I hadn't seen since that day. From Irvin's introduction, I learned that she is actually my own older sister. However, ever since this female elf saw me, she's been staring at me with the look of someone judging a criminal. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. When I asked her what her purpose for being here was, she angrily pointed at me and said, "In the middle of the night, you brought Owen to this kind of bar. What's your purpose?" You can imagine, such a charming elf woman, actually said to me, "Little Humph, how about we go to your room?" Just a short while ago, when I walked into the messy bar, Xiaoko said, I heard a familiar voice. It was a call coming from the corner. The other one was a female elf who looked extremely similar to Owen. I later learned in the introduction, she's her own sister. No wonder she's so similar to Owen. While I was observing the female elf, she also looked at me with cold eyes. The awkward moment didn't last long. The elf called Trisha. He questioned me, his tone accusatory. "Last night, you brought Owen to that chaotic bar. You didn't even show up yesterday, and left her waiting here all night." It's an incomprehensible question, but her expression didn't look like she was joking. When I came to my senses, I asked Owen, after getting out of the maze, how many hours had passed since then, and the answer I got was 30 hours. Crazy. Not 4 hours, but 30 hours. No wonder my whole body feels so refreshed. So I actually slept for a whole day. Then I didn't make many excuses. I sincerely apologized to Owen. But at my apology, the two sisters showed quite a surprised expression. It's like the apology of a barbarian I've never met before. The reason for meeting Owen. Actually, I could give many reasons. But I don't want to tell her. I said to her directly and decisively, I don't want to tell you why. If she's really curious, she can ask Owen herself next time. What I actually meant to say is, don't be in the way here. I meant for her to leave quickly. Luckily, she understood what I meant. This angry expression proves everything. Then, Trisha suddenly placed a storage pouch on the table. There are 350,000 gold coins inside. It's the value of Owen absorbing the goblin essence. So she means for me to take the gold coins and leave. This is just like a famous scene I've seen in a TV drama. After I adjusted my emotions, I threw the problem to Owen. At that time, the essence I handed over to Owen in return was, hoping she would help me get the essence I wanted. If possible, I would like to continue teaming up with her in the future. The loot share can be adjusted to 50-50. In simple terms, it means wanting to form a two-person team with her. Upon hearing this, Owen's eyes immediately sparkled with excitement. But soon after, his expression darkened. In her apologetic gaze, I heard Trisha's voice from the side. It turned out that the elves had a tradition where a CR ceremony's first exploration must be completed alone. But from then on, all maze explorations must be done with one's older sister. This was truly an unexpected outcome, but I also made a quick decision. Although she's a partner I get along with very well, there's no reason I have to stick with her. If that's the case, then I need to calculate this carefully. With Trisha's confirmation, 350,000 gold coins is half the market price. According to our original agreement of a 9-to-1 ratio, you still owe me 280,000 gold coins. But before I could finish speaking, that detestable elf woman said with a sly look, I almost forgot about that. Then she pulled out another bag. It just so happens that there are 280,000 gold coins inside. Damn it, I almost got played as a sucker. This despicable female elf. Now I understand why the barbarians hate this race so much. Then, with a dark expression on my face, I had something to say to Owen. Tell her to get lost as soon as she's finished. Meanwhile, Owen also looked at her sister, with longing eyes. Her usually well-behaved sister's actions seemed to be beyond her expectations. Then she sighed. Suddenly, she pointed at me, and asked me to swear that I wouldn't sleep with Owen. I thought I must have heard wrong. She only said we shouldn't sleep together. Does that mean physical contact is allowed? What a self-important little elf. Then, without hesitation, I swore an oath in the name of a warrior. As for me, someone who crossed over here, I never cared about a warrior's honor. And Trisha, who heard my oath. She had never talked back to her older sister, but judging by Trisha's smile as she left, she didn't seem angry. With my comfort, the little girl started to lift her head again, and incidentally, she pulled over 60,000 gold coins from her pocket. This is the belongings of the archers and the redhead who attacked us. The rest of those people's equipment. There was too much, so she left it in her dorm. She plans to bring it to me next time. She's been with me for a long time, indeed. That girl knows exactly what I want. Although she decisively let her go, she couldn't help but feel a little reluctant. Then, she suddenly spoke with caution, asking how she should repay me. It turned out she was still thinking about it. She hadn't forgotten the vow to repay the life-saving grace. So that's why. Her sister made me swear an oath. She must have been afraid I'd make excessive demands. I haven't thought of any other requests for now. After sleeping all day, my stomach is rumbling. When I asked her what she wanted to eat, this girl hesitated for a moment, and then said she wanted to drink. It turns out she deliberately stayed sober at yesterday's celebration party, just so she could have Her first, welcome back drink with me, for a foreigner who grew up in the sanctuary until adulthood. This celebratory drink marking their safe return, holds great significance. Then the girl added, we shared hardships together in the labyrinth, so you absolutely must drink with me. What she doesn't know is, this is also my first time. When I said I was 20 years old in the maze, she actually thought I was joking. No wonder she keeps calling me old man. Actually, I'm just like her. I just became a warrior, and this is my first time entering the maze. Shortly after, a large table of delicious food was finally served. We drank and ate, chatting about many things, because I spent most of my time in the maze, only speaking when necessary. This private conversation is a first for us. Looks like this girl's tolerance for alcohol is a so-so. After only one drink, she's been staring at me with those charming eyes. He muttered to himself, the older man's outfit today is so handsome, he can really drink. Seeing her vixen-like expression, I thought of a way to repay him, but my request will be difficult to fulfill here, because the guards in the city will quickly catch us. Hearing this, the young girl immediately blushed. Then, with a seductive look, she said, how about we go to the uncle's room together? This elf woman even took the initiative to come to my hotel, but what she never expected was that I would act in such a way towards her. Just a short while ago, in the labyrinth, we, who had barely escaped with our lives, were enjoying delicious food and fine wine. After our first deep conversation, the young girl, already tipsy after a few rounds of drinks, looked at me with a gaze that was truly captivating. Then, I made up my mind. After downing my drink in one go, I gathered the courage to ask her, let's move to another place to continue our conversation. The little girl who overheard this, blushed instantly. She even took the initiative to suggest going to my personal dormitory. At this moment, I was carefully studying Owen's body. Of course, my vow with her sister had not been broken. Although the vows of this world mean nothing to me, I am completely on a different wavelength from this girl. Owen, spread your legs a bit wider. Right now, I am forcing her to do stretching exercises. She keeps screaming in agony from what I'm putting her through, and that sound really drove the old man in the next room crazy. The moment I released the little girl's arm, she was like she had been reborn, immediately curling up to the side, afraid I would bother her again. Under my careful observation, she discovered that absorbing the essence of the goblin has increased her flexibility by 4 points. But seeing her pained expression, the improved attribute doesn't seem to have a noticeable effect on her body. The little girl who learned my true intentions muttered with a disappointed look. It turns out I brought her to the hotel to check her abilities. Seeing the look of grievance on her face, it seems her little mind was expecting something else. If we were to use our abilities in the city, we would definitely be quickly captured by the patrols, so we can only do the check in a hidden space. Dungeon and Stone is a very unforgiving game. It's not hard to tell from the character's stats screen. Typically, the main character's attributes are divided into 3 categories: physical, mental, and supernatural abilities. However, in the game interface, just click the plus button. Strength. For example, if a character's physical stats are fixed, and if those stats are increased in XT's muscles, then the weight they can carry will increase accordingly. At the same time, their physical attack power will also increase. That is to say, depending on the different details, what each character can do will be completely different. As someone who's played this game for 9 years without eating or drinking, I'm still clueless about some of the finer details of the attributes. Like this Goblin Archer essence I harvested this time. Its attribute panel shows +7 tenacity. Regarding this attribute, besides knowing it's a mental attribute, the other effects are a mystery. As for the little girl who absorbed the tenacious attribute, the only change after leaving the maze was that she developed a fondness for cookies. While I was still immersed in these details, the little girl gently tugged at the corner of my clothes. Her eyes showed she was extremely sleepy, although there were still many details I wanted to confirm. But looking at her condition, that was all for today. Afterwards, I blew out the candles and lay down in bed. The little girl showed no signs of discomfort. She fell asleep directly in my arms. Although I remembered my sister saying not to sleep together, it definitely wasn't what she meant. Amidst these random thoughts, I also drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Owen and I were sitting side by side on the bed. Excitedly, I observed the neatly arranged equipment on the floor. These are all the spoils from our maze adventure. Then, we kept only the truly necessary items, while the rest of the equipment was sold at high prices to various merchants over the course of the morning. We found them and sold them one by one. When we sold the last piece of equipment, we surprisingly had a huge sum of 1.45 million gold coins. Excluding Owen's 50,000 gold coins, my personal gain was 1.4 million. For explorers entering the maze for the first time, this is an unbelievable amount. After we finished splitting the bill, I decided to walk her to the central square before we parted ways. We walked all the way to the junction, to Central Square. It was different from when we passed by earlier. Now, the crowd here was buzzing. I approached with a sense of confusion. It was only then that I realized the soldiers were carrying out SX. And these criminals weren't murderers, robbers, or violent arsonists. Their crime was simply failure to pay taxes. In other words, because they had no money. Amid the soldiers shouting, the man's head on the guillotine fell instantly into the wooden bucket in front. However, the crowd nearby actually rushed toward the bucket with the bread they had brought. What was even more surprising was that they soaked the bread in blood and devoured it ravenously. In the face of the sudden outbreak of bloodshed, Irving was so terrified he started to tremble, because the scene before him was even more shocking than the beheading. And the reason these people were so frenzied, it's just a superstition, that drinking the blood of the executioner will dramatically increase one's fortune. Currently, because Owen and I are both of different races, our annual taxes are 700,000 gold coins, although it's slightly different from the game. But there's nothing I can do. Taxes will increase every year after that. So now is the time to invest in myself, because besides waiving the fees, the first year with lower taxes is the fastest growth period. If I just sit around comfortably, if I can't return to reality, their blood might become my blood. If I don't want that to happen, I have to save money frantically, at least enough to become an explorer, who can freely move about on the 6th floor of the labyrinth. To survive in this world without being executed, I need to understand all the knowledge of this world. So, after breaking up with Owen, I came straight to the library. The air here is filled with the smell of paper and ink. There's even a solemn silence that makes you hold back a cough. Yet, in this very environment, I actually met another barbarian. She's Puyol's second daughter, Nea. She sleeps so soundly in this environment, truly worthy of being the top female warrior of the barbarians. When I poked her back, she woke up from her sleep. Ignoring the quiet of the library, someone loudly called my name, and she saw other members of her race in the library, which filled her with excitement. Then, perhaps sensing people looking at her, Nea lowered her voice. The reason she came to the library was because of a suggestion I made before entering the maze. When she led the barbarians astray, I had given her some advice. Think things through before acting. These words also made him realize, you need knowledge before you can think. That's quite a remarkable thought. If she wasn't falling asleep snoring with her book open, that is. She really does have a strong sense of awareness, but her actions are far superior to those of other barbarians. And in her descriptions, I can feel the impact of my first maze exploration. It seems I've also taken quite a few blows, while other barbarians only know how to boast about how easily they kill monsters. She actually decided to come here to learn. Then she said, only after arriving here did she realize that she didn't recognize many of the characters. She unknowingly fell asleep. Speaking of which, Nea immediately got up and went to the Holy Land to learn the characters from the elders. It's truly a race that the more you understand, the sadder it becomes. Because Nea was worried that if she didn't act on it when she remembered, she would forget her decision. As she walked towards the exit, Nea seemed to remember something. She turned back and said to me, if I make it out of this maze alive, I'll repay you for the advice you gave me, and if you need help, go to the Angry Horned Bull Inn to find her. And I really hope within a day or two, she doesn't forget today's appointment, because I should be needing her help very soon. After Nea left, I browsed the library for a while. This is an incredibly vast library. It probably won't be like the 21st century, where you can find locations through a computer. Just as I was struggling to find the book I wanted, I saw a librarian named Gly who was stacking books, and she turned toward me as I coughed. I slowly opened my eyes. A moment ago, I was feeling down after losing the beautiful dark elven maiden, but in the next second, I immediately found a wild and free-spirited barbarian warrior. And the barbarian warrior will become my next overnight companion. Just a short while ago, and she slowly opened her eyes as I coughed. Slowly opened her eyes. But before I could explain what book I was looking for, she, still drowsy, suddenly cast a spell. At the same time, a faint light seeped into my body. When I cautiously tried to avoid it, I heard her lazy voice. She actually said, from now on, I can just walk around freely. When I reach the relevant area, the book I want to read will automatically appear. After saying this bookworm, Gly, started to doze off. Then, while wandering around the library as instructed, I understood the meaning of what she said about finding books. With keywords in mind, my gaze would automatically find the relevant books. No wonder this library is so vast. There is only one Gly. So this is the magic that makes things so convenient. Then, I picked the book that caught my attention from the bookshelf. The first book, The World of Destruction. This is a nearly 1,000-page book that tells the history of this world's origins. For thousands of years, the world has suffered under a witch's curse. Therefore, to survive, humanity could only eke out an existence in the last remaining castle. But at that time, the royal family, in order to acquire more resources, forcibly opened a passage to another dimension. And this passage is the labyrinth we know today, the second book. This book describes the magic stones on monsters, and the process by which they become bread, water, steel, etc. Although I don't understand the principle, I still forcibly crammed this knowledge into my head. The third book, Monster Scramble. Through this book, I also learned why the barbarians and the elves had a great war before, and this fourth book is of great significance to me now. In this world, the so-called evil spirits are those that come from another dimension, an evil entity that seizes others' bodies. Although it doesn't explain why the evil spirits appeared, we can understand the efforts the royal family and the temple made to eliminate them. After reading the summary of this book, the conclusion is, if I don't speak the world's taboo language, then I won't be suspected of being an evil spirit. The death of Lord Guan, called the First King's Death. His death was 150 years ago, and this game began the day after the First King's death. In other words, this is a world 150 years after the game's setting. No wonder the in-game knowledge I know is often wrong. The last book is Dimensional Instability Observation Record. That's what the blonde guy I was with said at the time. When the maze entrance closed and we entered simultaneously, there's a possibility of unstable phenomena, he theorized. It turns out that the reason I entered at the moment the maze closed was because I fell into the dark zone. When I looked up after seeing this, the sky had already turned black. Now it's the third day since leaving the maze. A month in this world has 30 days. So, in 27 days, the next maze will open again. But I thought I had just fallen asleep. It turns out it was already the next morning. The moment I opened the door, I found that this girl had contracted a new essence. The problem is, she doesn't know how to control it yet. Just like that, in an instant, my room was completely trashed by her. It only took her 10 minutes. My room became spotless. If she's good at doing laundry and cleaning, it's really true. After we sat back down, I first congratulated her on getting the new essence. I directly asked her if it was necessary to take the time to come over for such a small matter, to prepare for the next maze. It would be best to spend more meaningful time. But before I could finish, she said in a wrong tone, even though what I said was right. She couldn't control herself, wanting to tell me about this joy the first moment she knew. Or does this girl have some strange fantasy about me? But in order to maintain a longer-lasting partnership with her, I adopted the demeanor of a seasoned salesperson, and subtly turned the conversation around. I will be staying at this hotel, so if you have any questions in the future, feel free to come to me for advice without hesitation. But it's still worth maintaining our friendship, because we're comrades who have shared life and death together. The girl's face instantly brightened. After parting ways with Owen, I went to the Angry Horned Bull Inn, which NEA had mentioned earlier, to improve my personal strength in the shortest time possible. I went to the Angry Horned Bull Inn, mentioned earlier by NEA, to improve my personal strength as quickly as possible. What surprised me was that it was full of barbarians. The daily lodging fee here was only 300 gold coins, and it was a room with 5 beds shared by 10 warriors taking turns. They even scheduled shifts to save gold coins. I also saw the person I was aiming for. NEA, Puyol's third daughter. When she asked why I was looking for her, I went straight to the point and told her, I want to fight you. Because I need combat training now, even though in the maze I've achieved more than any barbarian. But in terms of pure combat skill, I'm no match for these warriors. Following Ania's cheerful agreement, we arrived at the training ground. Many people came to watch us. Although I came here to learn, I don't want to lose too miserably. But just now, the barbarians who were cheering for me as the strongest warrior, immediately started shouting excitedly. Now NEA is the greatest warrior of all time, because from taking hits to losing my shield, it only took her less than 3 minutes. Her combat skills are indeed formidable. From this moment on, I was DD'd several more times. And she's very smart, not like an ordinary barbarian. NEA is a very strong warrior, and with my kin, Gowlock, she wouldn't betray me. NEA, are you willing to be my partner? But the split will be 8-2. But before I finished, she suddenly interrupted me, when I thought this proportion dissatisfied her, hurriedly explaining, and I'll cover the rest of the expenses. NEA heartily grasped my right hand, and said directly, she doesn't understand ratios like X to Y, but she'll believe Bjorn Jandel. Only then did I feel relieved. I finally found a trustworthy overnight companion. the barbarian sacred grounds the next day. The chieftain was waiting for our arrival early. I still vividly remember how decisively he killed the evil spirit. Therefore, I didn't like coming here. But for the soul engraving, to be more precise, it's the immortality technique. I had no choice but to come here, because this is the engraving I must acquire, the next time I enter the maze. They are clearly the most cunning of the elven race in this world, but at this moment, they are being enslaved by the mindless barbarian tribes. The ones being enslaved even include 2 sisters from the elf tribe. The different races in this world have various unique attributes. Elves obtain the essence of souls through contracts. Dwarves increase their forging success rate through blessings of luck. Druids enhance their fighting strength by signing contracts with soul beasts. Barbarian warriors can increase their soul imprints. And the immortality technique I just requested is one of the barbarian soul imprints. But before my words even finished, the tribal chief, who had been smiling brightly just moments before, he instantly fixed me with a murderous gaze. Because what I said was information not meant for young warriors to know. The look in his eyes at that moment was exactly like the one during the CR ritual when slaying an evil spirit. This tribal chief is truly suffering from late-stage paranoia. But to deal with this type of patient, I had a plan before I came. Because I found information about soul imprints in the library. So I immediately explained. I saw in the book, during the battle for the elf race's sacred object, the soul mark has been of great help. But before I could finish my sentence, the tribe leader's hearty laughter interrupted me. You've actually gone to the library, how interesting, including NEA. Your generation actually has 2 remarkable individuals. From his praise, one could sense his enthusiasm for the young generation of the barbarian tribe, eager to learn. Then he added seriously, if the warriors need it, the barbarians have no reason to refuse the soul imprint. But there is a big problem here. That is, the cost of soul imprinting is as high as 800,000 gold coins. Soul imprinting often requires many expensive herbs. Even at high-level imprinting, not only are large sums of gold coins needed, but if the corresponding herbs aren't available, imprinting is impossible. For me, who's been prepared for this? This money had already been prepared. Then, amidst their surprised expressions, I pulled out a heavy bag of gold coins. At the same time, to alleviate their doubts, I adapted my story with Owen and told them a new tale. When I entered the first layer of the maze, I was lucky to encounter an already wounded elf. Then, in the secret realm, I commanded her like a slave. Along the way, I also collected meaningless essence. As the price, I extorted a large sum of gold coins from the elf sister. You are the first to empty the despicable elf. Well done, Yundel's son, Bjorn. Unexpectedly, my stories pleased them quite a lot. Not only the tribal chief beside me, but even the other tribesmen in the distance. He also came to my side with an excited smile. The chief, still laughing at this moment, actually returned me 200,000 gold coins. He even said it was a gift for the great little warrior. I actually earned 200,000 gold coins with a story. Our tribal chief is such a good person. Then I also shouted sincerely, I'll work harder from now on, and make those elves look bad. So this is what it means to become more charming the more you look at them. I feel myself gradually falling for this race. Soul branding is a type of strengthening technique. Its principle is injecting the magic from the magical materials into the body, and bestowing special powers, so that even adult barbarians can see the soul circuits. During the pure infancy, the tattoos are applied early. This is also why all barbarians are tattoo fanatics. In addition to this, wanting to become a formidable defensive warrior, this immortality technique is a necessary path. When I thought I could easily obtain the imprint, the pain I felt at that moment made me involuntarily scream out in excruciating agony. I actually have to endure this pain regularly. This place is really annoying. Having successfully absorbed the soul mark, I rushed to the WQ merchant without delay. During my sparring with NEA, I observed that the hammer-type WQ I used before wasn't suitable for me. Plus, with the undead technique I obtained, therefore, what's more suitable for me right now is a reinforced shield and a more agile WQ. I ultimately spent 220,000 gold coins to buy a one-handed WQ. Secondly, there wasn't a suitable helmet for my head, so I spent 170,000 gold coins to custom make one, plus 360,000 gold coins for the armor. Currently, we only have about 50,000 gold coins left. It's been a long time since we left the last maze. I haven't realized how much time has passed. Meanwhile, my daily schedule has long been fixed. I wake up around 7 a.m. and have breakfast with Owen, go to the library to read until 4 p.m., then head to the Angry Bullhorn in around 5 p.m. for sparring. Starting from the 7th day of training, I also began sparring with other barbarian warriors. Although it wasn't the training method I had expected, it was a fight driven by instinct and intuition. She also gave me a lot of help. Through constant practice, I was occasionally able to defeat NEA. Although NEA has considerable skill, her attack patterns are too predictable. Therefore, I offered some suggestions, but she's already developed the habit. It'll be hard to change in the short term. After the practice, I returned to the hotel. After showering, it was around 9 p.m. Owen would arrive at my place on time then, and we would eat a late-night snack together. Although I also wanted to tell her that it's not necessary to travel several hours back and forth, just for a meal. Every time I see her bright smile, I hold back and don't say it. In the end, we finished the late-night snack around 11 p.m. After repeated efforts, there are only 2 hours left before the next maze. At this moment, NEA and I have arrived at the agreed location early. This is the Explorers Association. If we want to be assigned to the same area for the expedition, we must form a team and get approval in advance. Following GLY's instructions, when both of their hands touched the crystal ball, a faint blue light appeared. At the same time, they heard, Level 9 Explorer, the fee is 15,000 gold coins. If you don't cut back on living expenses, I almost couldn't afford the fee for Fudan. Although it was hard to accept, I still obediently paid the fee, because when entering the maze, the destination is usually random. But I had already accepted this magic. At least we can start our adventure in the same place. After leaving the Explorers Guild, we went to a nearby upscale restaurant. During my conversation with NEA, I also learned that she was trying to save money, so she was only eating 30 gold coin hard rolls every day. It's such a heartbreaking story. To repay NEA for helping me practice, I treated her to the most expensive barbecue set, but she actually swore a loud oath of loyalty to me, and said that even if I jumped into a fire pit, she would follow. He asked me not to abandon her. After a touching meal, we arrived at the maze entrance. There were 10 minutes left until the maze began. Passers-by, unlike usual, were everywhere around us. They were all fully armed, just like me. But among them, there is a group of unusual beings. A group of barbarians, unarmed and only carrying WQ. Look at their posture. They must have just finished the CR ceremony. At this moment, NEA, standing nearby, couldn't help but sigh. It reminded her of what she once wanted to do, but in my opinion, she hasn't changed much from a month ago. Just then, a loud voice was heard, announcing that people could enter. With the announcement's end, the originally crowded square instantly became spacious. Shouldn't we go in now? NEA, beside me, couldn't hide her excitement. But I wasn't in a hurry to enter. I explained to NEA, I want to try something. I read about it in a book. Entering the labyrinth when space is unstable can create miracles. But I haven't finished speaking yet. NEA hurriedly said, she wouldn't understand such complex content. She will follow my instructions. But with my insistence, her face gradually became uneasy. There was only about a minute left before the entrance closed. And at this time, the entrance was about the same size as when I first entered. When I heard the words, the gate will close soon, I decisively entered the maze with NEA. After passing through the entrance, when I opened my eyes again, I was met with endless darkness. Amidst Aenea's frantic cries, I calmly lit the torch I had prepared beforehand. As I expected, entering during the unstable phase of the entrance's magic, we actually arrived directly at the entrance to the second floor. I'm starting to like this race more and more, because the tribe's first female warrior wants to have a child with me. Just not long ago, after a month of careful preparation, we will go to the secret realm again. The entrance is about the same size as it was the first time I entered. Brief moment. Taking NEA, I resolutely entered the secret realm. When I opened my eyes again, I was met with endless darkness. Amid Aenea's frantic exclamation, I calmly lit the torch I had already prepared. Just as I had expected, when we entered the unstable magic phase at the entrance, we directly arrived at the second floor entrance. While the other adventurers were still fighting monsters, all the wandering in the darkness was simply skipped by us. Then I activated the teleportation formation to the second level. You are the first to open the portal. Experience +2. Soul level +1. NEA still couldn't believe what she was seeing, because the chieftain had told the newcomers that it would take at least 3 days to reach the second level. But I didn't listen to her, because the sight before me was truly terrifying. The dark earth and the air, suffocating. Every step I take here makes a crunching sound. I can even hear faint cries. If my memory serves me right, this should be the tomb of the dead. Is it because I've entered the second layer that I suddenly feel a denser something around me? It entered my body through the bloodstream. Only after I consulted NEA did I learn that this was the reason for my level increase. The game dungeon and monolith also has level elasticity and agility. Depending on the level, soul power is different. For example, when I use skills, my magic power will increase as my level rises. Even the amount of essence I can absorb will increase as my level increases. Although NEA is congratulating me from the side, she can't understand how someone like me, who hasn't killed any monsters, can level up. I was able to level up because I achieved an accomplishment. For example, opening the entrance to the next level for the first time. will grant corresponding experience points. This is also a simple way to gain experience. I have to keep this secret. Then I made a request of NEA. She must keep the method of entering the secret realm confidential. If anyone asks, tell them we also spent 2 days to reach the second level. If they are experienced explorers, they will quickly reach the second level, and they'll see us, beginners, ahead of them. They will definitely question us. So we better keep a low profile. Because in this world, I fear those damn adventurers, more than monsters. The scene changes. Right now, I'm doing something incredibly awkward. Although other explorers have already used this method, actually doing it is really uncomfortable. I call this the barbarian candle mode. The torch here is a magical tool. Once you turn it on, it will keep burning for 3 days. The Tomb of the Undead has much stronger monsters compared to the Goblin Forest, but there are no traps here. So for barbarians who prefer charging recklessly, this place is actually more suitable for us. At this moment, NEA spots 3 ghouls. There are only 3. It's probably because it's the first day. Starting on the 3rd day, the number of monsters will double. NEA, at this moment, shouts that she hasn't stretched her muscles in a long time. Excitedly, she rushes to the front to meet these monsters. She truly is the top female warrior of the barbarian tribe. With just one encounter, she routed them completely. But this NEA, the next second, she cried out and hugged my neck tightly. So it turns out that even someone her size can be afraid of monsters. It was a female demon. In most cases, she wouldn't attack people on her own initiative. So we can ignore them. Just don't provoke it. Although I can understand why she's scared of these things, I really wish she wouldn't cling to me every time she hears a strange noise. Doesn't she know how heavy she is? It even feels like I'm losing half my life every time she hugs me. When NEA saw that the monster making the noise was a skeleton soldier, embarrassed, she charged straight into the horde of monsters, brandishing her longsword. Naturally, we also started encountering new monsters, giant ghouls, among others. This monster is twice the size of an ordinary one. There are also mutated skeleton warriors and skeleton archers, but these monsters don't pose much danger to us, because it's still the first day in the dungeon. So the monsters that respawn are only a few. Also, my strength has improved quite a bit since the first time. First, the size and weight of the WQ in my hands are perfect. Therefore, I can efficiently crush these skulls. Next is the armor that protects my entire body. It allows me to fight more aggressively. Finally, the helmet I specially customized. At critical moments, it can easily block arrows from archers. Although I am good at eliminating enemies, there is a companion who is even more powerful than me. At first, I couldn't understand why barbarians like to shout and scream, but after this battle, I finally understood the reason. Because right now, I am completely captivated by this pure battle mode. I'm deeply fascinated. This feeling is even more exhilarating than being with Owen. This must be due to the barbarian's unrestrained nature. I really like this race more and more. Muscles bulging, veins popping. To me, NEA looked more like a monster at this moment. Just a short while ago, after NEA and I entered the maze, we had been slaying monsters on the 2nd level for a whole day, although we had made some gains. Simple wounds like this heal in about a minute. It also increased my stamina and stamina recovery speed. Although getting branded hurt like hell, the effect is truly remarkable. Unbeknownst to me, the terrain changed. The ground was no longer damp, it had become hard, and we can hear the banshees shriek much more clearly. This means we've entered a high-level area. We'll soon be facing level 8 monsters. But my warning isn't over yet. I sense heavy footsteps in the distance, and then we see a huge creature. This is an undead creature. In the game, this monster is designed to increase the difficulty. It's a special monster that's been enhanced on the 2nd level. Although I had prepared with NEA before coming, seeing this guy in person, it looks even more terrifying than I imagined. As I said before, we only aim for the head, because attacking other areas is meaningless. Although it has a human appearance, it stands over 3 meters tall, with knives and shields hanging from its arms. To be precise, 2 WQs have replaced its arms. This is what's called the protein sword and shield. At that moment, NEA charged forward, wielding a large KD in both hands. I shouted and followed closely behind, and I attacked its flank with a WQ. But was that really the feeling of something heavy, emanating from its body? It felt like I hit solid rock. This guy's tough as nails, but fortunately, the attack just now successfully got its attention. If that's the case, NEA will have a chance to land a fatal blow to its head. Just when I thought the battle was over, Ania's full-force strike with the large blade was actually deflected. I didn't expect its defense to be this strong. In the game, this guy is notorious for his incredibly high defense. He's already infamous among the players. But when we actually fought, I didn't expect him to be this strong. The area NEA just hit, completely healed in just a few seconds. That must be due to his passive skill. And as I was pondering, this guy suddenly shouted loudly. This oppressive aura was even stronger than during our previous clash. Then, to our utter astonishment, it actually activated an active skill to summon ghouls. With the ground shaking, a horde of ghouls were desperately running towards us. In this moment of crisis, I didn't hesitate. I told NEA to deal with the ghouls first, while I would hold off the big boss alone. Although this big guy has a passive skill, I also have immortality. Therefore, I don't intend to dodge. I will use the barbarian's most sincere courtesy, to directly face each other and brawl. At this time, continuous blows rang out around us. Just as we were fighting passionately, NEA also joined the battle. It turns out that during this time, she had already taken care of those ghouls. Her presence has definitely relieved me of a lot of burden. Even when this guy was stunned, he was ambushed by my hammer. A lot of blood started flowing from his ear. But before I could fully rejoice, since its wounds have started to heal, other monsters would have been killed instantly, under this level of attack. But this one's recovery ability is too strong. Should we give up this area, and go to a lower level monster zone? Just as I was about to give up, the monster's body suddenly lost its balance and swayed. It turned out to be NEA, who had found an opening. She grabbed a leg of the 3-meter-tall creature and hoisted it upwards. This is a technique I often see in UFC fights. Muscles bulged, veins popped. In my opinion, NEA was more like a monster at that moment. I immediately joined the fight. When I struck hard at the other ankle where it contacted the ground, with a muffled groan, it finally fell heavily to the ground. Then we saw a surprising sight. This big lump is moving like a bug. It can't even stand up on its own. This is truly delightful. I love this kind of fight. NEA loves this kind of fight too. So this is the true fighting style of a barbarian. Killed an immortal monster, plus 2 experience points. NEA and I came through a spatial instability. And as complete novices, we encountered a level 8 monster here for the first time. Imagine. Just when I was at my wit's end with it, the monster's body suddenly lost balance and began to sway. It turned out to be NEA, who found the opening. She grabbed one of the 3-meter-tall creature's legs and lifted it upward. This is a technique I often see in UFC fights. Muscles bulging, veins popping. To me, at this moment, NEA looked more like a monster. I immediately joined the fight. When I forcefully struck its other ankle where it contacted the ground, with a muffled groan, it finally fell heavily to the ground. Then we saw a surprising sight. This big brute was writhing on the ground like an insect. It can't even get up by itself. This is truly a delightful thing. I really enjoy this kind of battle. NEA enjoys this kind of battle too. So this is the true battle style of barbarians. We finally heard the system's voice. Killing the immortal monster, gained 2 experience points. Watching the body turn into light and disappear, NEA and I showed bright smiles. Although we don't possess any powerful magic, we relied solely on brute strength. We successfully killed the level 8 monster. With Aenea's scream, the moment the monster disappeared, we saw fist-sized magic stones. In this world, a level 9 magic stone can be exchanged for a steamed bun. A steamed bun is worth about 20 gold coins. An 8th level magic stone is 5 times the value of a 9th level magic stone. In other words, the giant monster we risked our lives to kill was only worth 5 steamed buns. If we add in the cost of summoning the ghouls, our total earnings this time are 300 gold coins. Then, NEA, suddenly realizing the value, gravely asked me, how much were the rolls we ate at the inn? I looked back, and the cream pie bread I ate at the time cost about 300 gold coins. NEA, hearing this, suddenly revealed a wicked smile and excitedly said, so, for every large monster we catch, it means I can eat another cream pie bread. It has already become her new unit of currency. If divided by an 80-20 split, the monster is just a small piece of bread to her, but it's better not to tell her that. Yet, she still excitedly shouts that she wants to keep hunting. Her brief disappointment at the smaller amount than expected is short-lived. Watching NEA, who was once again so enthusiastic, I unconsciously smiled as well, choosing. Although my previous companion, Owen, was also quite good, Owen was ultimately a passive type. As I thought about these things, Owen, adventuring with his sister, suddenly felt a profound sense of regret. Afterward, we continued hunting large monsters in the vicinity. Whenever we encountered a large monster, we would shout our ancestors' names together and charge. Then each of us would grab a leg, and he lifted him up and threw him to the ground. Then, like pounding rice cakes, he wildly hacked at the top of his head. This guy quickly turned into light and disappeared. Although the speed of filling the magic stone bag increased considerably, we were still not satisfied. We killed the prey even more desperately. Just like that, within a single day, we actually killed 70 large monsters. Before I knew it, time had reached the second day. Although, starting from the second day, these monsters appeared 2 at a time. But through the experience of facing more than 70 on the first day, we have also mastered many key points. So it's not as difficult as we imagined. We will knock one down first, and then take down the other one. Of course, if we can't kill them in a short time, we'll be surrounded by the food-devouring ghosts they summon. When the enemy leaves their range, these monsters won't continue to pursue us, so we just need to run for our lives. But from this afternoon onwards, if we see more than 2, we'll have to give up. Thus, amidst the killing and fleeing, we ended our second day of hunting. But as we were about to return to our previous campsite, we encountered another group of explorers for the first time. They wandered in the darkness, carrying a torch, and in that moment of mutual surprise, NEA, standing nearby, suddenly said in a menacing tone, "If you have nothing to say, get lost." Hearing this, the other party didn't linger. They quickly disappeared into the darkness. Then NEA said to me, "They already know where we are. So we need to find a new camp, because humans are untrustworthy." At that moment, I also remembered, when I saw NEA in the library before, she also showed a particularly disgusted expression towards humans. Something bad must have happened. Although we were searching for a new campsite, it was hard to find a spot as good as the one we had earlier. But at that moment, a painful SY sound came from up ahead. It was accompanied by sounds of pleading. Normal humans wouldn't beg for their lives like monsters do. It's obvious, someone killed someone. Damn it, what a bloody mess. Just as we were about to escape the scene, a cold voice announced itself, and something like a flare shot into the sky, instantly illuminating the surroundings. Thanks to her, I can clearly see the scene. For bodies lie on the ground, recently deceased. There are no monsters around. Only traces of a campfire and poison remain. This woman before me, they're actually marauders who specialize in murder and robbery. The man's throat was pierced by a short sword. Blood splattered directly onto the enemy's face. For an ordinary person, this would be a fatal strike. For the man, however, it was just a simple flesh wound. The man's next move completely shocked the onlookers. And just before we ran into this gang, with incredibly bad luck, we unintentionally witnessed a murder. And these people are called the Raiders. They are people who specifically hunt and kill fellow explorers, and then create high profits from their equipment. Of course, in this world, plundering other players is illegal. The penalty is even SX. But as long as no one reports it, there's no way to let the enforcers outside the maze know. Just like when I killed 6 explorers in my first maze, I still wasn't investigated. The worst case scenario right now is that the raider on the other side wasn't wearing a mask, and NEA and I saw her face clearly. Height is about 1.7 meters. She has a slim and slender build, deep red hair that reaches her shoulders, a noticeable tattoo under her left eye. From what we can tell so far, if we make it out alive, we can fully accuse the person before us. And I've never seen such a professional thief, because so far, I've never heard of such a predator on the second floor. That means she left no survivors. There are 4 bodies underground. Look at their gear, it's all high-end equipment. There's even a mage among them. These people must be adventurers active around the 5th floor. But she managed to kill 4 of them without a single scratch. That means her strength surpasses even the 5th floor. That means her strength has already surpassed the 5th floor. As I pondered the situation before me, this woman crouched down, and with surprising skill, stripped the corpse of its equipment, carefully packing each item into her bag. Even the enormous longsword fitted inside without a problem. That means this backpack is an extremely expensive spatial storage bag. At that moment, my thoughts were, rather than envy and jealousy, what I felt first was boundless fear. Because just the spatial bag he possessed. The gap between that guy and us. At this moment, the woman who was busy harvesting, suddenly whispered, "Barbarians, are you all in cahoots?" I didn't respond to her words, but NEA secretly asked me if I wanted to duel with her. She also grabbed the great sword on her back. NEA is truly a remarkable warrior. No matter how strong the enemy is, she always fights bravely. But if Owen were there instead, he would have been trembling with fear. But the power disparity between the two sides, no matter how I think about it, I don't have the slightest chance of winning against those in front of me. Therefore, there's only one way we can leave here alive. Only one. That is, to run away. The instant the illumination flare lost its light, I ordered NEA to run away, and I demanded she run with all her might, using every ounce of strength she had. Self-respect is meaningless in a life-or-death situation. We ran desperately in the darkness. Occasionally, I would check the compass to confirm our escape route. Because we could escape to a lair with a portal, we had a glimmer of hope. If we weren't wearing beginner equipment, that raider would very likely have hunted us down. Just as I felt relieved, another group of adventurers suddenly appeared. They were a party of 4. Although it's hard for humans to trust, from a certain perspective, that might actually be a good thing. Because for explorers, raiders are the common enemy. If you explain the situation and offer them proper compensation, maybe you can get their help. So I put aside my reservations, and directly recounted what I had seen earlier. I hoped to get their help to escape the pursuit. Clearly, the bald man in the front didn't believe me, but under my oath as a warrior, they finally believed me. They agreed to accept us. Taking this opportunity, they also added more demands. If we defeat the enemy together, they will take all the items. I have no objection to that. The bald man at the front immediately said, I've already deployed the formation within a 3-meter radius. If we enter this radius, we can conceal our presence. This is a very powerful area control concealment skill, although it also has a fatal flaw. That is, those who enter the formation see it move, to avoid fighting and escape the pursuers behind. I still decided to enter the bald man's formation. However, when NEA and I entered the formation, besides being unable to move, I also felt a complete lack of strength. I couldn't even speak. At the same time, I heard the system sound of the characters being subjected to suppression. Then I saw the bald man, unable to move. His face slowly said, "We're really lucky. 2 barbarians actually walked right into our trap." While searching for lodging in the secret realm, we unintentionally discovered a raider hunting players. I judged that her strength far surpassed both NEA and me, to have even a sliver of a chance. The moment the illumination's effect disappeared, I took NEA and desperately fled towards the entrance of the first floor. But what I never expected was, I had just barely escaped one human predator, and now I've fallen into the trap of other predators. In this world, humans really can't be trusted so easily. It's clear that the bald man right now is in a very smug state. He even mocked me. Are we unable to move, unable to speak? Judging by their equipment, their strength should be similar to ours. And the core skill that a team of this level would possess, would be Golem's ZY skill. To break free from that skill, then they must endure the damage. Even a little bit of damage is enough. They started to show their true nature. They even lamented. After waiting for so many days, they finally caught a woman, but she's from the female barbarian tribe, so I decided not to confront NEA. Instead, I planned to sell our hearts directly. Through their conversation, I could truly feel the ugliness and malice of these people. Then the short man in the straw hat took out a sharp knife. Am I really going to meet my end here? Damn it! I made so many preparations to survive. Am I really going to die here? As his blade plunged down, murderous intent filled the air. The blade was aimed right at my neck, with death imminent. My brain raced. If I wanted to live, I only had one chance. The moment my body was injured, if I could break this skill, I would have hoped. The sharp blade pierced my throat. At the same time, my nervous system sent a tingling sensation. My previously stiff body relaxed. I immediately tilted my head back, like a boxer cocking their head. The prelude to a powerful blow. Under the dumbfounded gaze of the dwarf in the straw hat, I picked up the short hammer in my hand and struck his face fiercely. Actually, my condition wasn't very good either. There was always something spraying out of my throat. My body was weak, and my vision had become quite blurry. But I couldn't just fall down like this. I struggled to hold up my body, which was about to collapse. Then, I pulled the knife out of my neck, and threw it toward NEA, who was not far from me. Although it accidentally stabbed into her chest, at least her body could move again. As I collapsed from exhaustion, NEA was like the Grim Reaper. He swung the large sword he was carrying. He cleaved the close-range archer in half. Immediately after, he turned and leapt. He struck another guy in the head. The iron helmet he wore provided no protection at all. Blood sprayed out from the helmet as it was knocked away. The bald man who was a little farther away, desperately fled from here. NEA didn't rush to chase him down, because at that moment, I was lying on the ground, covered in blood. In Ania's eyes, my condition must have seemed like I was about to die. Otherwise, I wouldn't have shouted medicine with my last bit of strength. She actually picked me up, and painfully said things like, I must avenge you. But thankfully, as I was about to die, NEA produced a life-saving potion, giving me a second chance. Actually, that's also thanks to the immortality spell I got last time. Otherwise, I would have already kicked the bucket. Only when she saw the wound on her neck slowly healing, did NEA feel relieved. She even praised me, saying that surviving a neck wound like that, made me the most amazing barbarian warrior she had ever seen. In her eyes, this scar should be a kind of medal, I suppose. Then we waited until our injuries healed. After collecting all of the opponent's equipment, I led NEA in pursuit of the bald man. Fortunately, it wasn't long before we caught the guy. It's not hard to see that NEA, at this point, intensely hated the guy. But to escape that terrifying woman behind me, I have to use the bald man's skills. And just then, with a slight whooshing sound, a poison dart viciously pierced the bald man's throat. It turns out that woman had been hidden amongst us all along. She's still watching us, because she also said, our fight just now surprised her very much. And seeing this woman, I didn't hesitate at all. I directly called out Ania's name. We didn't need to say anything to each other. I just called her name. As if she'd been waiting for it, she dashed right in front of me. Since there's no escaping it anyway, Then we'll just have to fight head-on. While we were struggling for a glimmer of hope, the plunderers in the rear had already hidden themselves among us, even constantly watching our every move. And I, upon seeing this woman, this time, didn't hesitate at all, and directly called out Ania's name. We didn't need to say anything to each other. I just called out her name. She rushed forward, as if she'd been waiting. She ran straight in front of me. Since there's no escaping it anyway, we'll just have to face it head-on. Strike. And she even used the gap in my attack to dodge, and blocked my strike with a short sword, the blow I put everything into, yet she didn't even budge. How many essence of power has this woman absorbed? If I couldn't knock her down, I would try to hold on tight, but just as I was about to give Nea her chance, I suddenly felt completely weak. How did she do it? Did she pierce my armor with just a short sword? Did it even stab into my spine? At that moment, Nea screamed the name of our ancestors, and once again charged forward, swinging her large blade. But before Nea could even complete her attack, the raider had already swiftly slashed across Ania's body, instantly rendering her unable to fight. Just a single glance, Nea and I became lambs to the slaughter. At that moment, she stared as if pronouncing our death sentence, telling us to give up resistance, because her dagger was coated with a paralyzing poison. My mind went blank. It's pitch black before my eyes. Equipment, strength, combat experience. In every aspect, there's a clear gap between us. No matter how hard I rack my brains, I can't think of a way to change this situation. But just as I waited for death to arrive, she actually stopped attacking. She bent down and said to me, if I could swear not to tell anyone about what happened today, she would spare my life. Then she added, actually, when we first met, if she hadn't run away immediately, she'd have proposed this suggestion from the very beginning. It's because she owed the barbarians a favor. She even said she'd try her best to avoid killing the barbarians herself. And hearing this, I finally understood that she had been hiding nearby all along. The reason I didn't do anything. It's like I didn't use my own hands to wipe away snot or something. Then we both fell silent for a short while. At that moment, Nea, who was lying there barely alive, said, don't believe what that woman says. She's just toying with us. But even if she is toying with us, we have no choice at this moment. Dying from being toyed with, or dying from something else makes no difference. At this moment, the woman is about to speak. He'll give me time to consider. However, his words weren't finished yet. I shouted loudly. I swore an oath on the honor of a barbarian warrior. There's no need for time to think about this, because there's no other way. And seeing me make a decisive judgment, this woman looked down at me with a mysterious self-glow. Then, she sprinkled something on my wound. In addition to the injury itself, my body gradually regained its ability to move. Afterwards, she shifted her gaze over me. I asked Nea the same question, but this straightforward Nea, after a moment's thought, actually refused the chance to survive. She didn't ask any further questions. She just nodded slightly. But from her actions, I could feel it more clearly. Nea would definitely die. Then I urgently shouted at Nea, swear it. Didn't you promise to obey me? Trust me. Hear my cry. Nea showed a rather aggrieved expression. Fortunately, she finally made a vow in a resigned tone. My life is on the line. What's the point of protecting my pride? After hearing the vow, the woman didn't hesitate and turned to leave. Watching her departing back, I unconsciously asked, what level? And to my nonsensical question, she tilted her head and simply replied, the 8th level. An explorer active on the 8th level. No wonder her skills are so extraordinary. Maybe even 10 more people like me wouldn't necessarily be her match. But, watching her disappearing back, I secretly made up my mind. If there's a next time, the result will definitely be different. We, who had barely escaped death from the hands of the raiders, we rushed to the first level of the secret realm without stopping. No matter what, the probability of encountering high-level bandits here is much lower than on the previous level. With the system's prompt, Nea and I's bodies passed through the teleportation array and appeared in midair. Sure enough, Nea still couldn't grasp the rhythm. Just like last time, she fell back down to the first floor. But when I asked her if she was hurt, Nea looked listless, muttering to oneself, it hurts so much. But for a warrior who has already lost her dignity, she doesn't even have the right to feel pain. From my perspective, her words paint a grave situation. It's likely a plea for survival, an oath to cling to life. It must be quite a shameful thing for her. Most of the barbarian tribes are known for their straightforward personalities. But I can't let her stay down like this. So I encouraged her by saying, the warriors who survive are the strong ones, because only by staying alive can you have the chance to defeat the enemy. But before I could finish, Nea interrupted, saying, I shouldn't speak for too long, because she wouldn't understand, but she could grasp the general meaning. To overcome such humiliation, one must become a strong warrior. You said I'm this kind of powerful warrior, but that's not actually what I meant to say earlier. It doesn't matter though, As long as she can recover, that's a good thing. So far, we haven't closed our eyes for more than 20 hours. After everything that has happened, I should be mentally exhausted. Yet, at this moment, I still can't fall asleep. Although I don't have extreme impulses like NEA, the bad mood is the same. It's the same feeling as when I was saved by the blonde guy's team. The priest at that time refused to treat me. The warrior behind me even thought that the potion given to me was a waste. He even tossed it to me like garbage. But back then, I could only lie on the ground like a dog and drink the potion. Although I was just glad to be alive. But I can't forget how I felt at that time. I made up my mind then that I wouldn't suffer such humiliation again. But today, I've suffered this humiliation once more. So where exactly did things go wrong? Until now, I made what I believed to be the best choice under limited circumstances. On the other hand, the decisions I made were merely to urgently avoid the current predicament. But ever since entering this world, there was no other way. The moment I opened my eyes, someone's head was already rolling. And one bizarre event after another kept unfolding. Because of this, I can only passively act with safety as my priority. But if things don't change in the future, I won't be able to survive. If that's the case, then I'll change the plan. Having made up my mind, I woke NEA, who was still asleep, and I also asked for her opinion, if there was a way to become stronger. But it would involve tremendous risk. I asked NEA what decision she would make, but after hearing what I said, she answered without hesitation, of course I'll take the challenge. Anyway, I can't get stronger without facing death. Whether it's an easy path or a difficult one, no matter which path you choose, life will always throw you unpredictable events. If that's the case, then I'll take the initiative. This time, we're the ones starting the trouble. We're going to the rift space in the secret realm, because the pain of not being able to kill me will only make me stronger. There's a rather rare place on the first level of the secret realm. 4 types of monsters appear there simultaneously. For the average explorer, it's too dark here, torches are a must, making it quite inefficient. Plus, to reach the second level as quickly as possible, there's no need to come here specifically, but that's why this place is perfect for hiding something. At that moment, we discovered the massive stone stele blocking our path. This is a monument erected for the first person to discover this place. It's exactly as I remembered. Then the trigger for the secret condition here is also likely to be the same. Then I emphasized to NEA beside me again, everything that happens next must remain confidential. NEA didn't hesitate and immediately made the oath. But then she foolishly asked what a crack space meant. Simply put, a crack space is another dimension within the secret realm. To use a game analogy, it's like a dungeon. This instance has a player limit. The condition to open the first level is to arrange the 4 monster cores in order. Finally, placing this find in the middle will activate the instance's mechanism. The player limit for this instance is 5. Its difficulty depends on the strength of the matching players. I'm also looking forward to meeting the explorers here. Congratulations, your character has entered the rift space. The rifts in this world refer to another space within the secret realms. If we compare it to a game, it's called a dungeon. Defeat all the monsters after entering each level of the dungeon, and the next level's portal will open again. This rift also has a cooldown time. If you want to wait for the rift to open naturally, you'll have to wait for several months according to the city's time. However, blindly waiting for the cooldown is an extremely inefficient choice. So I found a way to forcibly open the rift. There are 4 rift spaces on the first level of the maze. The dungeon we're in is called Blood Castle. A red sky as if the world is about to perish. Countless flocks of crows flying. And a distant black castle. Because I added an 8th level crystal core when I started the dungeon, I also anticipated coming to this blood-red castle. But seeing this scene with my own eyes, it truly has a strong sense of dread. Fortunately, this is a first-layer rift space. Therefore, regardless of the difficulty, it presents a challenge. What matters now is who's coming in here, because only the first 5 people will automatically be matched into a raid group. And just then, the fissure began to fluctuate. NEA also hurriedly shouted to me, someone's coming in. We were both anticipating who our first teammate would be. Meanwhile, Owen, in the first level of the maze, was exploring with his sister. And his sister would occasionally sigh in his ear, why are you using the spirit again? Owen just felt that using only a short sword to kill monsters was too tiring. But this rebuttal was criticized by his sister. Didn't I tell you, even without a bow and arrow and the elves, you still have to learn to protect yourself. And at this moment, Owen's mind was full of the uncle's advice. Because the uncle had said, it's best to strengthen your strongest skills. They say that a key quality for explorers is trust in the team. Do your best. But Owen's justifications are quite a foolish conclusion to my battle-hardened sister. Although the meaning behind those words is correct, but the partners in this world aren't so simple. So the older sister solemnly warned Owen again. Partners are just partners. Don't trust him too much. Little did she know, Owen, the one being warned, was still arguing in his heart. Uncle is definitely someone you can trust. Owen, who was a little impatient, hastily changed the subject and asked her sister to take her to the second floor to kill monsters quickly, because uncle must have made a lot of money on the second floor. But for her wealthy sister, the gains from the second floor aren't worth mentioning. She plans to take Owen to the rift space on the first floor. It seems Owen has also heard of this instance, because in Owen's understanding, this place requires very good luck to enter. Indeed, many unlucky explorers have never entered the instance, but the last appearance of the crack was 8 months ago, and the longest cycle period for it is 8 months. Therefore, the crack space within a layer will soon appear. Upon hearing this, Owen answered skeptically, "I see. But the older man never said that to me before." In the sister's eyes at this moment, no matter what she says, Owen always uses that foolish barbarian for comparison. But in her eyes, the barbarian is at most just a lucky beginner. Later, struggle to kill the monsters on the second floor. Then, the sister here confidently said to Owen, "You have to believe me, because in another year, you and that barbarian will have a huge gap." And before she finished speaking, a tearing sound suddenly came from the surrounding space. Looking in the direction of the sound, not far from them, a deep crimson spatial rift was slowly revealing its true form. The two elves, who reacted quickly, rushed forward at the fastest speed. I wonder if they'll meet the barbarian RD uncle in the maze. While the Owen sisters were searching for the instance entrance, they suddenly heard the hissing sound of space tearing around them. Looking in the direction of the sound, not far from them, a deep red spatial fissure appeared, slowly revealing its true form. The two sisters, reacting in time, rushed forward with all their speed. But the moment they contacted the space, a feeling of emptiness surged from their palms. In a flash, they narrowly missed the spatial fissure. But the reason I only decided to come here at the last moment is because, in this world, what's more terrifying than monsters are adventurers. When we looked toward the torn space, accompanied by a loud laugh, the first thing we saw was a short, stubby leg. Then, his whole body was quickly spat out by the crack. Our first team member is a dwarf. Then, through the other rifts, the remaining two team members were also spat out by the gaps, one after another. But what surprised me the most was that the next one to enter was actually a magician. It's hard to imagine that such a being would exist on the first level of the mystic realm. To my surprise, the current team composition seems quite reasonable. Hearing my astonishment, NEA quickly asked, "Are magicians really that impressive?" In her impression, the librarian GLY is also a magician, but she didn't feel that they were particularly powerful. But what she doesn't know is, the other party is only a level 9 mage. In this city, mages are a very important resource. In other words, to be able to enter the instance, she has already proven her own strength. And as for my answer, the little MN mage on the other side quickly praised me. She said my insight was quite impressive. She then introduced herself. She is a level 6 mage named Lena. In her introduction, she wore a slight smile on her face, but I think she has a condescending air about her. Yeah, in my memory of the game, wizards were all incredibly arrogant. This is actually pretty good behavior. Then, she said to the man behind her, "He's a professional mover I hired." After Lena finished her introduction, the dwarf beside her also introduced himself. His name is Murad. He's an adventurer with 3 years of experience. No wonder his equipment is so brightly colored. So he already has 3 years of adventuring experience. Then NEA and I briefly introduced ourselves. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, I asked the mage, someone of her caliber, shouldn't need to explore the first floor. Regarding my question, Lena only gave a symbolic explanation, saying that she had only heard about cracks appearing recently. Then, she smoothly took over the topic, and directly spoke in the captain's tone, stating that the spoils from now on would be divided among the 4 people, excluding the porters, and she required us to follow her instructions. Regarding her request, the dwarf quickly agreed. Then, the wizard's gaze turned to NEA and me. Actually, this issue didn't need much consideration. Since we already had a wizard in the group, I needed to keep a low profile, because the mastermind behind persuading the royal family to eliminate the evil spirits is the magician. But just when I was about to agree, NEA, who was standing next to me, directly rejected the magician's proposal. Her next words left me frozen in place. I don't know what's so special about the magician, but I hope Bjorn can lead us. He is a wiser warrior than anyone else. Wow, I agree with that. Why on earth would NEA do that? Although I want to shut her up. Doing so would only make things more suspicious. And after NEA felt the questioning gazes of others, I explained with even more effort. I spend 6 hours a day in the library reading. She even said I was a great warrior. At that moment, I was incredibly embarrassed. I really wanted to find a mouse hole to hide in, under Ania's enthusiastic praise. Everyone looked at me with strange eyes. But luckily, this group of people treated Aeneas' actions as a farce. The little dwarf beside me said with a smile, "Being able to accept your wife's adoration is something to be blessed for." Nea rarely showed a blush of shame at these words, but her rebuttal only served as an excuse for shyness. No matter what the content is, at least we have the gossiping dwarf. The topic successfully shifted to something else, and most importantly, the wizard didn't seem that interested either. I just hope that before the moment of parting, she doesn't direct that concern towards me. Just at that moment, the magician interrupted everyone. He urged everyone to set off quickly. He also mentioned that he wanted to collect specimens, so there would be a lot of investigations to be done. However, after hearing the command, the dwarf tilted his head and retorted, "We don't know anything about each other besides our names." I feel the same way about what he said. Any team needs to know each other's abilities and what they can do. Even an emergency team should explain the core essence before starting. But the mage said firmly that all of this was unnecessary. Anyway, the monsters in Blood Castle are all below level 7. She's more than capable of facing them alone. She even said that for research purposes, she would keep all the loot dropped by the boss for herself. How could there be such a shameless woman? Is the situation about to take a turn for the worse? In the course of playing this game, countless instances of internal fixing have occurred, and the reason for all of them is money. For wealthy mages, research is the top priority, but explorers only enter the maze to make money. Just now, the magician said he wanted to take the boss's loot, which is the most valuable thing in this instance. The dwarf also showed anger at this moment. His voice became quite low. "Do I look like a BC?" As his words came to an end, the air around them instantly grew cold and heavy. The human man also placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. It seemed he was not just a simple porter. Soon after, it was the magician who broke the heavy silence. "In addition to the spoils, all the magic stones will be distributed to everyone." But these words only served to anger the little dwarf even more. Although she was trying her best to hide it, a look of panic was clearly visible on her face. It seemed she hadn't expected such a hostile reaction. After a brief silence, the magician continued, "Then she will share the boss's combat items. But the essence it reveals must belong to me." The dwarf also agreed with this. He replied in a tone that he considered quite fair. All the spoils obtained later would be fairly decided between the two of them by rolling dice. But listening to this, the feeling changed. They actually treated Nea and me like we were invisible. It was so hard to open this crack. "We can't go back without getting at least a crumb. I can give you the essence and the best equipment, but we'll keep the skill stones." And at my words, they both gave me a rather sharp look. The magician even said, "Without you barbarians, there wouldn't be any problems. These people just a moment ago seemed like good people, but in the face of profit, they instantly disappeared without a trace. But it doesn't matter. The previous request was just a test. Then I can give up the skill stones. But aside from the competition for equipment, you need to give us 2 other priorities, aside from what the boss drops." As expected, the dwarves and the mages easily agreed to my request. This should be the absolute limit. In the eyes of these guys, besides the boss, there shouldn't be anything else worthy of their attention. After the negotiations concluded, the wizard and the dwarf acted as if nothing had happened, and flashed their kind smiles again, just like before. What a terrifying group of explorers. I have to become much stronger. Whether those guys cut the ladder or not, I'll still climb up, step by step. Only then can I protect my rights, like them. A deep black blood pool, a dark red sky. That's why it's called Blood Castle. Blood Castle is divided into 4 chapters. The first stage is the transition bridge at the castle entrance. The second stage is the battle to defend the outer walls. And finally, the demon worship chamber in the Lord's Hall. Shortly after ascending the mountain path along the ridge to the castle, upon reaching the castle entrance, we were confronted by 2 winged, demonic statues. They were level 8 magical beast gargoyles. Normally, they are motionless like bronze statues, but the moment an enemy comes into view, they immediately pounce, a truly troublesome monster. Although the usual strategy is to sacrifice one person to absorb all the petrification skills, then the rest can kill the statues to lift the curse. But with a mage, it's a different story. When I and the dwarf approached the statues, they suddenly opened their eyes and spread their wings. At the same time, my lower body instantly turned to stone, but it didn't last very long, because Lena next to me cast a remove curse spell. The stone golems, without their petrification ability, they're just lambs to the slaughter. Nea and I are in charge of one. The dwarf is responsible for the other one alone. The short dwarf swung his hammer like a madman, smashing the statue's legs violently. The moment the statue fell to the ground, he was waiting for this moment. He smashed the skull with a hammer, with great satisfaction. So this is how the dwarves fight. A simple, straightforward attack from below, quite manly. When the 2 stone golem monsters, as they turned into points of light and disappeared, the magic stones also fell down, but we don't need to pick them up, because these magic stones floated into the air by themselves, flying into the porter's large backpack. At this time, the mage also explained, "The magic stone will temporarily keep itself safe for us, because I don't want to waste time on this kind of thing." Then, led by the dwarf, we opened the door to the next stage. From this moment on, we can say the dungeon has officially begun. I followed behind the dwarf with a sense of wonder. It's very dark here, we should need some lighting. With the magician's incantation, a glowing orb floats in Lena's palm. The previously dark space is instantly illuminated. As if drawn by light and sound, a group of decaying corpses rise from the walls. These are a group of monsters with no experience points, and they don't even drop magic stones. If it weren't for the essence dropping, their bodies wouldn't even disappear. Their method of attack is just to latch onto people and not let go. So to save magic, the mage didn't participate this time. Although we didn't have the mage's help, it didn't take long to clean up these monsters. After our fierce and powerful attack, these little guys were cleaned up completely. When I killed the last monster, it also dropped the zombie commander's horn. When NEA wondered what it was, the dwarf beside her said with a smile, "You'll know its use soon enough." This time, connecting to the next stage is an iron gate. The dwarf also confidently asked the wizard for help. It was just a simple spell, and yet it blasted a huge hole in the massive iron gate. One can't help but marvel. The wizard's attack power is indeed formidable. Bridge. But the stone bridge was severed some distance from the castle. This wasn't destroyed by time. It was designed this way from the start. At this moment, NEA, following the wizard's instructions, drank from the horn she had obtained. As the sound of the horn echoed, the bridge opposite also began to slowly descend. But it wasn't only the falling bridge that was moving. Also, in the moat surrounding the city walls, blood was beginning to accumulate. But within this blood, countless hands were struggling. Soon, these monsters revealed their true forms. These are the unranked corpses we killed earlier. So the task for this stage is simple. Just hold out until the broken bridge falls completely. Although they're unranked monsters, on this narrow bridge, facing so many of them, it's still a very tricky situation. There is a risk of falling if we're not careful. Just as we were about to proceed cautiously to face the enemy, the sorcerer confidently spoke to us. She told us to gather around her. With a powerful shout, she cast her spell, focusing it around us. A violent whirlwind arose. These whirlwinds were like giant blenders, instantly pulverizing all those stone monsters. Watching the stone monsters instantly obliterated, we all gasped in astonishment. They were just corpses. Although she spoke humble words, her eyes were filled with a sense of pride. Although I had expected her strength to be impressive, I never imagined she would be this powerful. In the dungeon, you really shouldn't offend someone like her. Soon after, the slowly descending wooden bridge finally connected with the stone bridge. Just like that, since we so easily finished the Bloody Castles chapter, this feeling didn't bring me any joy. What replaced it was a sense of emptiness and insubstantiality. Based on my past experiences, the simpler it is at the beginning, the harder it gets later. I could easily kill a super powerful 8-legged beast with my bare hands, but I was knocked out with a concussion by NEA, who was as fragile as a bird. And this was just the beginning of the tragedy. It's because she possesses a formidable strength that even I can't match. After we easily crossed the transition bridge at the entrance, we entered the outer city. Based on past gaming experience, countless battles awaited us here. But with the wizard, everything became quite effortless. A single group attack skill can wipe out 90% of the monsters. The remaining 10% are level 8 monsters with protein swords and shields. When dealing with these monsters, NEA and I have quite a bit of experience. You take the left leg, I'll take the right leg, let's do this. The dwarf's stunned expression is enough to prove how terrifying our efficiency is. As we passionately slay the monsters, Mage Lena doesn't rest either. She's dealing with these monsters with incredible regenerative abilities. They actually used a curse specifically aimed at worsening the wound. Without the regenerative passive ability, the monster became just a somewhat tough ball of flesh. As expected, the magic stone that burst out quickly floated in the air, and automatically entered the porter's backpack. Looking at the mage walking in the front, NEA exclaimed in amazement. She finally understood why everyone said that magicians were amazing beings. Meanwhile, the dwarves quickly began flattering her. Indeed, with a magician, the range of things they could do would greatly increase. Their conversation happened to reach Lena's ears. You don't have to praise me so much. I'm just a little bit talented. Plus I put in a little extra effort. But that little face couldn't hide her pleased expression. And I gradually understood her personality. Pretending to be humble but actually loves to show off. At the same time, she's a brilliant mage with a passion for magical research. You have to flatter her a lot to deal with her. Then, with everyone's help, they quickly gathered the research materials she needed. Judging by her actions, she must have done a lot of preparation beforehand. But they missed the most important female statue. Clearly, destroying the statue would drop that legendary item. Since that's the case, I need to find a chance to take it for myself. These experienced gamers often have rather unique habits. That is, when I see something strange, I must check the button, and I belong to this type of person. So, in my 9 years of gaming experience, I've uncovered countless hidden secrets, but information even a wizard doesn't know, a low-level barbarian knowing it could cause trouble. Then, by default, a large group of people marched into the castle. In the initial design, no monsters were placed here. Therefore, this was merely a necessary passage to the underground prison. To conserve the wizard's magic, the dwarf took out a torch and held it. Maybe it's because I'm short. At this moment, he looked like a mouse miner from a comic book. This is an underground prison. The monsters that mainly appear here are the Silent Witch, Twilight Soul, Hungry Dead, etc. I've really seen a ghost. These guys were just killing each other over loot not long ago. Yet now they're all fake, buttering each other up. Those two must be the quintessential realists. At this moment, Annie pointed to a small skull on the wall. Curiously, she asked what kind of monster it was. Meanwhile, the always flattered magician, seeing a chance to show herself, she, who should have been at the front, suddenly appeared in front of Annie, once again explaining the monster's origins with a smug expression. It must be said, she's put a lot of effort into studying the knowledge points of the secret realm. The monster in the corner is a small skeleton. It's a creature with extremely weak offensive abilities and no experience. However, Annie couldn't stand the smug magician. Just then, a creepy ghostly scream suddenly echoed through the dungeon. Annie, who had been filled with resentment, instantly turned into a fragile little woman, but she forgot that her strength is greater than that of most adults. Fortunately, I also have a good physique. Otherwise, with just a few shakes like that, I could have even suffered a concussion. Twilight Soul, if you get entangled with her, something quite terrible will happen. What a childish little girl. Since I have the chance, I'll retaliate immediately. Looking at Annie, who was completely pale, she still showed a rather pleased expression. I quickly tried to smooth things over, because I know that wizards have spells specifically designed for these kinds of monsters. Fortunately, although she likes to throw little tantrums, she doesn't procrastinate when it comes to official matters. After wiping away her playful expression, she immediately shot a blinding red light from her staff. In an instant, it pierced through the monster's body. Come. She must have sensed the death of her kin, but Lena showed no fear at this sight. For a mage with area of effect spells, it was actually a welcome event. Fire baptism. As her chanting came to an end, a massive burst of flames erupted from the staff, instantly filling the entire corridor. The countless monsters were instantly obliterated, and just as we were still in shock, we heard Lena's voice. It's time for us to move out, right? At first glance, it's just a gigantic blob of a monster, but a closer look reveals that it's a horde of corpses, tens of thousands of them, combined into a single monstrous being, and its body's ZD are enough to make even a powerful rank 6 mage curl up and vomit uncontrollably, and the real turning point can only be controlled by the physically strong barbarians. It's clear that the world behind the screen is different from reality. When we entered the underground prison, we could feel the spine-chilling atmosphere all over our bodies. Not only are there high-level monsters here, there are all kinds of bizarre and strange experimental tools, giving the feeling of a mad scientist's laboratory. While everyone else is feeling quite uncomfortable, the magician remains calm and composed. She even says that because she likes anatomy, the scene in front of her doesn't affect her at all. Hearing this, I couldn't help but think of that sleazy, greasy uncle. I hope the anatomy she likes isn't a barbarian's heart. Following the wizard, we successfully found the mechanism. When we opened the door, she specifically reminded us, this is the entrance to the next area. We will encounter countless obstacles inside. To avoid unforeseen circumstances, we've made a series of preparations in advance. We even left the porter's backpacks here. With the clicking sound of the mechanism's valves, a wave of foul, rotting stench poured out. What comes into view is an endless wasteland. The ground is piled with broken limbs and heads. Their decay and the stench of the pile are overwhelming. These even trigger a headache. The dim surroundings remind one of a long-abandoned wastewater treatment plant. In this situation, the first to react was the porter, who supported their body with the machete in hand, and continuously vomited what was inside. Surprisingly, the next to react was the magician, who, having dissection experience, it's possible I have a resistance to visual shock, but I'm quite vulnerable to smells. Surprisingly, I'm still holding up. If this were my pre-transmigration body, I should have fainted at the sight of this scene. But this barbarian's body is truly strong. I could even resist the pungent smell of decay. Then we walked through the dark underground. Every step we took sounded like stepping on a sponge. And as the light approached the center, a huge, hulking hill gradually emerged from the darkness. Even more surprising was that this hill actually spoke to us. A female voice, like a malfunctioning tape recorder, said, "Dad, please save us." It was supposed to be a quiet presence in the game, but now, it had turned into a living creature. The pile of corpses had even gotten up. It even reached out its demonic claws towards us. There wasn't much time for sentimentality. when I tried to call for the team. Even the little dwarfs I trusted were too scared to move. Those guys usually love to ZB so much. But at this crucial moment, they all failed me. A master of anatomy, even a powerful 6th order magician. I've encountered countless monsters, and have 3 years of experience as an adventurer, little dwarf fire. I'm just a simple porter, but I look like a fairly impressive human swordsman, although they once treated me and NEA as rookies during our beginner phase. Right now, the only ones still conscious are NEA and I. What are you all doing? NEA couldn't help but scold the group of R&D members, but at that moment, an object, like a shot put, was hurled towards them. And just as it was about to hit, it suddenly stopped in midair. Rotten blood and flesh dispersed instantly, sticking to everyone. Luckily, the liquid only stuck to Ania's clothes. But the little dwarf next to her was in pretty bad shape. In a short time, the dwarf lost all his fighting ability. And the sorceress, who we put all our faith in, was still vomiting. These guys are really unreliable. No wonder things went so smoothly in the early stages. I guess it's up to me to lure this behemoth away. If things go wrong, we could all be wiped out here. The attack method of the predator swarm is simple. They throw their body-sized ZDs at distant enemies, then pull in and devour those up close. It's like tentacles, with hundreds of arms growing all over its body, so we can't get too close to the swarm of monsters. The mage hasn't recovered yet, so I have to buy as much time as possible, at least until the mage wakes up. Every time the corpses ZD fly by, I would roll to the side to create some distance. Then I'd curl up behind my shield, protecting myself from the acidic fluids. After I'd repeated this cycle about 3 times, I heard a rather familiar incantation. As Lena finished her chant, blazing flames erupted. I didn't look back. Instead, I focused all my energy on the hut body group. With the screams of hundreds of people, the hut body group burned fiercely. Its outer shell was peeling off. Immediately, a huge skeleton soldier appeared before us. NEA joins the fight now. Although the skeleton is a level 7 monster, but since it's already been skinned, then NEA and I can handle it, with our quite coordinated teamwork. When its chest was shattered by us, it also turned into points of light and disappeared into the air. But after a short while, the disappeared points of light recondensed, faintly revealing a black aura. This mutated monster actually dropped a rare essence. He was clearly just a normal boss in the instance. At this moment, he is deeply attracted to the cold and beautiful human sorceress, and his way of expressing love is to drink the fresh blood of the other person. This is because he has mutated into a highly intelligent, higher-level vampire. In this world, the dungeons in the secret realms are like vast treasure troves. The elite monsters here not only provide a massive amount of experience, but the loot they drop is treasure coveted by all explorers. But the most crucial point is, the drop rate of essence in the instance will also be significantly increased. Actually, from a probability standpoint, the essence only appearing now is even stranger. Regardless, its ownership now belongs to us. Firstly, after entering here, it was almost entirely NEA and I who dealt with the leader. Plus, there was initially an agreement that we had the right to choose. But I originally wanted to obtain 2 other essences. The Death Essence with regenerative abilities, and the Chimera Wolf Essence that amplifies muscle strength. But under these circumstances, I unexpectedly encountered the elite boss, the huge golem, which only appears once in Blood Castle, and he also revealed a rather rare essence. Although its drop rate is extremely low, we shouldn't get blindly excited, because besides the enhanced special abilities, the corresponding penalties are also severe. First, its basic attributes are very suitable for the tank profession, although the decrease in cognitive ability will lead to physical sluggishness, but it can be seen that the increase in other attributes is also very high. Bone strength, which has a high impact on defense, increased by 55 points. In addition, weight increased by 21 points, which increases blunt weapon damage. Pain tolerance is also incredibly useful in reality. It even increases muscle strength and toxin resistance. But the problem is, it has a fatal flaw. That is its skill. A-rank skill, Bodily Explosion. A skill that uses a powerful bodily explosion to inflict damage. Although it causes considerable damage, it uses the character's health as a cost. Therefore, it also inflicts continuous self-damage, even because of having acidic bodily fluids. If injured, the acidic blood will splatter onto equipment, causing a significant decrease in equipment durability. In summary, although this essence is very powerful, it also absorbs potion and equipment repair costs. The effective duration after the essence explodes is 30 minutes. Let's put that aside for now. Let's first check their injuries. We then approached the dwarves. Through this ordeal, I've once again confirmed something. The details of this world and the game differ greatly. For example, take the dwarf's strength. Normally, he could easily defeat this boss, but mental factors caused him to completely lose his fighting ability. At the same time, the magician beside him gradually regained his composure. In that case, I suppose it's time to start bargaining. We've just dealt with the corpse golem. In situations like this, it's important to claim credit first. Very well, luckily I managed to use magic just in time. Damn, that sly human. You don't even mention saving my life, and instead you want to claim credit first. If I let her lead me around, I wouldn't even get a drop of soup. We saved you. That could be considered doing more than one person's share of the work, right? So we're reserving the loot from the final boss. Regarding my sudden request, the whole room fell silent, but after a short while, the dwarf was the first to speak, agreeing with my suggestion, because without us, they would have been dead long ago, and when I thought there would be a surprise, this cunning magician, after a moment of silence, actually opposed my suggestion, but then added, if it really is top-tier loot. She agreed that we would also have an equal chance to compete for it. It's a bit of a pity about that, but at least we got the chance to bid. Now, let's talk about the main topic. The leader we just killed dropped an essence. They probably didn't expect such a rare essence to drop. The dwarf and the mage unconsciously grinned. Long Chi's reaction was the most intense among the magicians. She couldn't help but exclaim in awe. The essence of Hutu Grime is even harder to extract than the essence of the final boss. It's even rare to find such specimens on the market. Its value is incredibly precious to researchers. Her reaction was just as I expected. She already showed a very regretful expression. Since that's the case, I should start the real negotiation. Seizing the opportunity, I said in a low voice, Lena, I have a suggestion. If you're willing, I can give you the essence. But if the leader finally reveals the essence, then the ownership should belong to me. Actually, the meaning is quite simple. It's just an exchange of uncertainly revealed essence for conditions. The wizard, after a moment of consideration, immediately smiled like a blooming flower and quickly agreed. She then took a small bottle out of her backpack. For the essence of a level 7 monster, she's actually using such an expensive test tube. This alone proves the importance of this harvest for the mage. Although it seems like my loss on the surface, if the essence of the final boss from the Blood Castle can be obtained, it is an invaluable existence. Therefore, this gamble is worth taking. After preparing ourselves, we set off again on the perilous dungeon path. After traveling for a while, we arrived at the entrance of a stone chamber. After the magician pondered the stone statue by the door for a moment, a magic book fell from a crack in the ceiling. Then, amidst the dwarf's fawning flattery, she once again struck a proud pose. The book's title was Internet Chronicle. It was a grimoire containing dark magic. Ordinary magic books need magical protection to be taken away, but this book is different. Therefore, it sells for a very high price in the market. Damn it, I originally planned to secretly retrieve it myself later. I didn't expect this magician to have done so much research, and I could only watch helplessly as she swallowed all that down. Seeing her unnatural smile, she herself must have known the truth. But why didn't she know about the one hidden in the fountain? We circled the devil's worship chamber, clearing the surrounding monsters step by step. Giant gargoyles, chimera wolves, and the second mid-boss, Bentra, and our luck is quite good. Not only did we previously obtain the essence of the body golem, but now we've also gotten the essence of Bentra. This luck, it doesn't feel like something I deserve. Level 7 monster, Bentora. It possesses 3 attribute forms. The sadness type emits a fog that causes mental confusion in its enemies. Attributes. The last attribute before us is thirst. Although it has the ability to drain blood during battle, this skill can be purified by a magician's curse. Therefore, the leader of this attribute is one of the easiest to deal with. Am I finally going to escape my bad luck? I haven't killed many elite monsters yet. Another top-tier essence has appeared. The dwarf and the mage were both offering their blessings, as agreed upon before entering the instance. This essence also belongs to Nea and me. It would be a lie to say I wasn't greedy. In fact, only the final boss remains. No one can be sure if the essence will appear again, but I still decided to choose quality over quantity. I gave this opportunity to Nea. From an explorer's perspective, Nea is more suited to this essence than I am, because her blood-sucking attribute is very suitable for sword-wielding warriors. And my development direction is that one day I will abandon offensive weapons. In addition, and more importantly, Nea is a trustworthy partner. Given her honest and straightforward nature, she probably won't leave my side on future adventures. He will be there to help me. Therefore, instead of worrying, I'd rather utilize the strengthened Nea. Choose the essence that better suits me, and this way, the efficiency will be higher. Thank you, Bjorn. I will definitely repay your kindness. With my permission. Nea couldn't contain her excitement, immediately setting off to obtain the essence. But there's one thing I haven't been able to tell Nea beforehand. The subsequent changes were dramatic, and immediately unfolded before us. Bjorn, how did you suddenly grow so tall? But there's one thing I haven't told Nea yet. Originally, Nea was about 2 meters tall, but in an instant, she shrank to around 1.7 meters. This is the basic effect of the Bentra essence. Although it will significantly increase the density of the bones, the premise is that it will reduce the height of the person picking it up, and the magician's explanation wasn't over yet. Then we heard a pitiful scream. I'm done for. No one will consider me a warrior like this. Seeing the exasperated Nia, the magician fanned the flames again, saying, but you've become beautiful. The nobles will love you when they see you. Honestly, except for the tattoos on her body, she's just a taller human female, that's all. Before she becomes even more desperate, I need to step in and smooth things over. So I pointed to the level 8 monster ahead and reminded her, don't panic just yet. Test your current strength on the undead monsters ahead. It seems others are also curious about Ania's change. They all stood aside, waiting for her performance. Then, after Ania gave a half-hearted agreement, she brandished her large sword and went to face the monster. But, it wasn't our eyes deceiving us. It was merely a casual swing. She actually sliced the level 8 monster in half with one strike. In the past, Nia and I needed dozens of hits to take down monsters like that, but it was killed with a single slash. At this moment, I truly feel happy for her. Puyol's second daughter, Nia, you are no longer an ordinary warrior. I've become a stronger warrior. It's fortunate that she regained her confidence. Although her reduced height is a bit awkward now, she'll become quite powerful once she adapts. After we killed all the monsters over the next period, we finally arrived at the entrance to the Blood Castle's final boss. The dwarf and the wizard had begun to say their goodbyes. But watching their flattering conversation, I felt a pang of regret. Today had truly brought me too much good fortune. Excessive good fortune, even, in my life. It seems like there's never been such a fortunate moment. A body plagued by illness, an impossible love, even being transported into the absurdity of a game. If I were to consider the worst thing that could happen right now, what would it be? Wait, was the color of this door knocker always like this? No, don't open the door. But it seems it's too late. As the gate opens, the ground began to shake violently. In the center of the vast stone chamber, a blood-red figure sat. It was actually replacing the dungeon's boss. He's a monster that only appears on the 6th floor and above. He's not just an ordinary vampire. He's a mutated, higher-ranking vampire. He's intelligent, charming. The Vampire Duke, Campomir. Don't think you're so amazing just because you're a high-level mage. In my eyes, you're all the same. Because the master of this body is an incredibly rude barbarian. So what can you do to me? Monsters in the game world are roughly divided into 4 types. First, the mutants, like the prosecutors or archers that appear in the goblin system. Second, higher species. The despined encountered on the land of the dead belongs to this category. Third, rare varieties, like the grime with the size of a ruler. Monsters that only appear in specific copies. And the last one, the higher tier mutated species. Monsters with DL memory and named DL. So we can only desperately run away. Vampire Duke Campomir. He is the leader acting alone and a level 5 monster. Not only is he proficient in close quarters combat, but he's also a master of dark magic. A guardian of a higher order mutated species. This is an unprecedented case. And it appeared in a first-level secret realm dungeon. Even I, with 9 years of gaming experience, have never seen this guardian before. In the end, I only learned about this monster from footage someone uploaded to a forum. But while I was desperately fleeing and trying to figure things out, that annoying mage kept whispering questions in my ear. He even asked me, a complete beginner, questions. How did she know there was danger inside before the door even opened? And I was planning to change the subject, to get her to stop talking and hurry up and escape. But she casually said that someone was carrying her, so she had time. That's infuriating. That being said, what surprised me was the color of the door knocker. During the game, I tried countless times with challenges just like the guide, but for some reason, it seemed I never triggered any special conditions. I was never able to approach this guardian. So after repeatedly reviewing the recording, I discovered this small discrepancy. Also, once you enter the instance, if you don't defeat the final guardian, you can't leave the challenge instance. And just as the dwarf was about to encourage us to fight it head-on, the Vampire Duke suddenly appeared in front of us, still in the form of a vengeful spirit. This is also why I hate guardians who use magic, because they don't play by the rules. With the vampire's appearance, the mage Lena's reaction was also extremely fast, because she also knows that the Vampire Duke uses the dark magic Wraith, which is most vulnerable to sunlight. The Wraith transformation skill allows for quick movement through phasing. Although the original body remains stationary and seeing it move, it can always descend to the location of the Wraith. Things almost got incredibly difficult. Luckily, Lena's quick thinking forced that vengeful spirit to disperse. Otherwise, he would have had to chase us personally in his true form. This bought us a few precious minutes to escape. But just as I felt relieved, I heard the unexpected bad news. The sorceress Lena actually fainted. In my understanding, vampires don't have this kind of essence. Could there be other essential abilities that I don't know about? Anyway, we need to escape from this underground prison first. The dwarves, although they agreed with my reasoning, but because the magician fainted, no one was able to lead us on the right path. Since that's the case, even if it exposes my suspicion, surviving is the most important thing. Then, with the little dwarf looking incredulous, I led everyone in a desperate escape. Although everyone's breathing heavily, it's probably because everyone is very fit, so no one has fallen behind. But the problem is, we can't seem to shake this thick smoke behind us. Vengeful spirits are especially afraid of sunlight. Fortunately, it's still daylight. At the same time, we also saw the sunlit entrance. Just in the nick of time, we dangerously arrived at the surface. The subtitle seems incomplete. It might be a character name or title, Savage. Then came the dwarf's incredulous questioning. Luckily, before I knew how to explain, my loyal fan, Nia, saved me from this awkward situation. Because in Nia's eyes, no matter what decision I make, I am always the wisest and greatest barbarian warrior. After a brief stroke of luck, everyone is once again engulfed in a sense of crisis. Because the sky has slowly started to turn to dusk. If the night falls, the vampire will still appear before everyone. The key point now is, first to confirm when the magician will awaken. Furthermore, I need to retrieve a treasure that the previous mage missed, within a short window of opportunity. Something that can be found after smashing the goddess statue. The goddess's tear. It's commonly referred to as a sacred relic in-game. Although it's a single-use item, but its use is both for treatment, and for delivering a fatal blow to the enemy. Luckily, I retrieved key items, and upon my return, Lena, the mage, also awoke from her coma. Later, in my conversation with her, I learned, she believed she was attacked by a vampire. The shared skills have backfired. That's why he fell into a state of shock. If he rests for about 20 minutes, his injuries will recover to a certain extent, but he can only use about 5 more intermediate magic attacks. With this level of attack, he definitely won't be able to defeat the vampire. So I asked directly and decisively, do you know of any other attack magic? For example, solar system attack magic. But the reply I received was a cold voice, because inquiring a magician about their secrets is a highly impolite act. Although I have a general understanding of the situation,